Illuminaughti is about to lose everything. In the last year, one situation originally to do with two content creators has evolved into one of the biggest scandals in recent YouTube history, where multiple content creators and ex-employees of commentary YouTuber Illuminaughti have come out with their stories exposing the true nature behind, at one point, one of the most celebrated content creators in the commentary genre. And at this point, I have no doubts that you have heard about this story. You've heard me speak about it, other content creators speak about it, Twitter accounts speak about it. Everyone at this point has heard about this story, but now things are changing. Now, I've covered this entire situation across a span of multiple videos, but out of all of the situations that we've gone through so far, what we're going to be speaking about today is the biggest indicator yet that Illuminaughti is not only losing the war of words against former friends and employees, but now, as I said, she is pretty much about to lose absolutely everything. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when a situation happens on YouTube, a little bit of drama, what would usually transpire is there's a week of conversations, people make videos about a certain topic, and then another situation happens and people move on. But with this situation, it is very different, because things aren't just happening on social media now. No, it's gone from a war of words to a war of the courtroom, because yes, as you may know, this situation has developed into an actual court case between all of the people involved, i.e. the main person, Illuminaughti, and 3 of her ex-friends slash ex-employees who are now being sued by Blair. Because yes, nothing says innocent quite like suing somebody into silence. And I did actually speak about this lawsuit in my previous video. I had a very small chapter towards the ending of the last time I covered this situation, but I never really went in depth when it came to the true extent of this Illuminaughti lawsuit. And honestly, the reason for that being is that plenty of other content creators have spoken about this lawsuit in depth at the time of making my original video, and I was just kind of waiting for the whole thing to blow over until more recent developments have come, and it really does just show to me that this lawsuit is probably the best indication of who Illuminaughti is truly as an individual, as a human being, as a person. Of course, we can go look at all the scuffles on social media, the things that she said in her YouTube videos, but we've done that already. In today's video, I want to go through this lawsuit extensively, because this lawsuit is very important for Illuminaughti, also known as Blair, because in my opinion, it pretty much is Blair's last hope at revitalizing any form of previous reputation that she had. A lot of people have asked the question of, why is Blair even going down this route? Obviously, this route is just the pathway to absolute disaster. Well, that was the original pathway, but now she's on another pathway to another disaster. It's just a never-ending mess for Blair. But I believe that she thinks that if she gets some form of victory in a court case about this topic, she can then wave that paper in the air and say, hey, look, I won in a courtroom. You will have to accept me. What I'm saying is the truth. I genuinely think that if she wins this court case, that is exactly what she is going to do. But based on everything we're going to get into today, I'm not too sure that she's going to win this court case. So yes, in short, what we're going to be doing today is going through this massive lawsuit, through every single chapter, and analyzing it in depth to truly expose all of the lies and manipulation in it. But we're not just going to be doing that, because there have been other developments which we will get into after the lawsuit analysis. But then also, I have actually personally requested 3 interviews from the people that are involved in this lawsuit currently, and I actually did get to speak to some of the people involved, and we will be going through the questions and the answers that I received and the questions that I gave in this entire video. So yes, there may be some things that you already know, but trust me, you can just sit back and enjoy it all, or you can just skip throughout all of the chapters, because fellas, this is going to be a long and wild ride. And I am just going to give you a quick fast forward to prove that to you by showing you where Blair's lawsuit is currently at. Well, basically, Blair's own lawyers are now admitting that her entire reputation has basically been destroyed, and now the lawsuit is at the point of where she is possibly amending the lawsuit for a 3rd time, meaning that she has a 3rd opportunity to provide evidence to actually back up any of her claims that she has made against the people that she is taking this case against. pretty much it shows that Blair's case is going absolutely nowhere, and the people of the court are basically saying, we need you to actually give us evidence for a second time. So yes, there is a lot to speak about today, my friends, and it's going to be a long one. But before we do that, I also do just want to quickly speak to you about today's sponsor. Now, my friends, on this channel, I like to create long-form content where I go through some big internet mysteries and uncover the truth behind a lot of situations out there. It's something I find a lot of enjoyment in, and I think you all know that at this point. But one thing I truly also enjoy when it comes to mysteries is fictional mysteries. I'm a big lover of stories, but the problem is because I'm making videos like this, as much as I love doing them, I can't consume as many fictional mysteries or thrillers that I would like to, and that is where I want to introduce you all to Audible, because Audible have completely fixed this problem for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I am genuinely proud to be sponsored by Audible, because Audible is the world leader in audio entertainment, audiobooks, podcasts, and Audible originals. And because of that, I can now and you can now enjoy a good mystery no matter wherever you are or whatever you are doing. For example, right now whilst I edit my videos, I am also listening on Audible to Lone Wolf by Greg Howitz and narrated by Scott Brick. Because I'm in the mood for a good mystery. I'm editing a video uncovering the truth, and now I want to listen to a fictional story uncovering the truth, and Audible has an absolute plethora of mysteries and thrillers, all for you to download and consume right now. The audiobook in particular I'm listening to is about a former government assassin on the run from the US intelligence who is basically just trying to make up for his past by using his skills to outwit another assassin, and it's genuinely a really good listen. And if Lone Wolf isn't your taste, Audible has a must-hear collection of the latest that the thriller and mystery genre has to offer, and I'm gonna make it a little bit easier for you by saying, if you want to listen to an amazing story right now, sign up with the Audible code INABBA at audible.com/INABBA, or text INABBA to 500 for your free Audible trial. Audible genuinely is a wonderful audio platform, and I highly recommend it to all of you. And of course, I want to end this by saying thank you so much to Audible for sponsoring my channel. I have personally used Audible for absolutely years now, and I could not recommend it even more. Thank you very much, Audible, and let's get back to the video. Now, my brothers, sisters, and sisters, there are multiple people that we need to speak about in this lawsuit, so I think before we go into the details of what's going on here, we actually need to bring up the players in this story. The 5 main individuals. Of course, the first one being IILLUMINAUGHTI, the Dark Lord herself, but then we also have these 3 individuals right here. Ozmedia, WONDERSTRUCK, and Felix the Kit Kat. Now, these 3 individuals at one point you probably have heard of, but if you don't, basically, they were at one point affiliated with Blair. Ozmedia, of course, is the ex-partner of Blair, and the other 2 were friends / people employed by Blair. Basically, they knew Blair very well, and of course, these are 3 people that have spoken up consistently against Blair in the last year. But also, I know what you're thinking, is this man stupider than I possibly estimated previously? Because, yes, I actually can count to 5, because I know right now I've only named 4 people, and that is where we need to get into one of the most important people in this story, which I don't really think is getting enough credit when it comes to providing all of the information that everybody is using when speaking about this specific topic. And of course, that is the man himself, MADCATSTER. Basically, MADCATSTER is a YouTuber / lawyer and a lovely man with some very cute cats, but most importantly, MADCATSTER is a lawyer who regularly covers legal situations to do with YouTubers, influencers, and everything on the internet. And in terms of the relevant context of the situation, MADCATSTER has been covering this thing since the very beginning of where even legal whispers of things happening behind the scenes started to begin. As you can see in videos titled, "Did Illuminaughti break the law?" Illuminaughti takes tainted corp cash, and plenty of other videos. MADCATSTER has been covering this from the very beginning, giving authentic, official, legal analysis. And of course, it is very important to get an authentic opinion from somebody that actually works in law, but this isn't the main reason that I'm mentioning MADCATSTER here. The main reason I'm speaking about him right now is because MADCATSTER is the main individual in this story providing the actual court documents in Blair Blair's legal case. He basically takes the actual legal document and creates a redacted version where he removes a lot of sensitive information and provides it to the public via his YouTube channel, and he has also sent these court documents out to other YouTubers to use for themselves in their videos. And this is incredibly important for this story because it's not like people are just now speculating on what's going on here. We now have a clear understanding of what is truly happening in this lawsuit, and it does really give us an insight into Blair's mind and her lawyer's mind. We can see what they're putting in this lawsuit and how vindictive and manipulative they are, and the amount of lies throughout this lawsuit is truly insane to me. Things just outright taken out of context and used to completely manipulate the story into making the victims in the story look bad. It's truly baffling to me the amount of housery that Blair has put into this lawsuit, but at the end of the day, given everything that I have spoken about in my previous videos, I'm not really that shocked. But to stay on track, yes, MADCATSTER has provided the receipts, and I'm going to be taking the receipts from the first chapter of this lawsuit because they are the only ones available to me. I don't actually have the file when it comes to the first part of the lawsuit, but then when it comes to the second part, I do have the lawsuit document for that, and we will be going through that. And in the third part, we're also going to be referring to MADCATSTER, who has once again provided the receipts. I'm not going to be copying what the guy has said. Obviously, I don't want to get myself into a plagiarism debate like our good friend Blair, but I do just want to give full credit to MADCATSTER for the hard work that he has done, not just in this situation, but in a plethora of YouTube-related cases. I highly recommend you go subscribe to him. He does great analysis and also just has really cute cats. But now with the others in this situation, the reason that these three here are embroiled in the controversy is for all of the more obvious reasons and context provided in my last videos that I expect most of you know at this point. But also the main reason that they're here is because Blair is currently suing Oz, WONDERSTRUCK, and FELIX for defamation. But yes, now we've gotten through the main 5 individuals in this video and what they represent in this case, I think it is time we actually get into the chapter of answering the question of where did this all begin? Okay, let's actually get into the beginning of where this story begins. Well, on the 13th of June 2023, Oz Media tweeted saying, "So IILLUMINAUGHTI has sent me a cease and desist. Best part is she cites a video with which I had no part in and demands that I make a public apology." And then 3 days later, Oz tweeted, "So IILLUMINAUGHTI sent a physical cease and desist to my dad's address as well, one I haven't lived in for 3 years, which she would know because I still live in the house we shared. Trying to scare my dad? You're forcing my hand here, something I initially didn't want to do." Now, in terms of legalities, this does seem to be the first act of legal intimidation that I can find from Blair in a public setting involving this situation. But in terms of a moral perspective of things here, whenever I see a cease and desist get sent to anybody, to me, it personally just seems like a threat of suing somebody into silence. By Blair using her financial position of power, she is clearly trying to scare somebody into no longer talking, because she obviously has a lot of money, probably more money than all of the people involved combined, and she is saying, hey, if you speak, there's going to be some problems, legal problems, which obviously means financial problems. It's messed up, but it is something that happens with a lot of influencers. I myself have received a big old cease and desist threat from a big British YouTuber in the past, and trust me, it is quite scary. No matter how much experience you've got, it is very scary when somebody rich and famous is threatening to silence you using the legal system. But then going further in the timeline, on the 23rd of August 2023, things went from bad to worse as Blair, of course, attempted legal action against Oz to take his home, which has thankfully now been resolved, and of course I went through all of this in my previous video, so if you want more knowledge on this, you can go watch that previous video and then come back to this. But yeah, this is around the point of time of where I feel like Blair kind of just gave up caring what people in the YouTube space thought about her. I think she was just trying to get some form of revenge with repossessing the house or repossessing the car when it came to WONDERSTRUCK, and it's a horrible thing to do, but we're just going to move ahead in the timeline now of where, yes, things start to get worse and worse. On November the 23rd, felixthekitkat tweeted saying, "My former employee IILLUMINAUGHTI is retaliating against me for things I've said said and done after my employment ended. She is falsely claimed to have served me papers and is trying to force a default judgment. Any help would be great. And attached you can see a court document involving Blair's company, which very much shows that this is now going legal. This is no longer little threats being sent out to silence people and hope that it doesn't have to go any further than that. No, this is Blair taking real action against the individuals that have spoken out against her. But when it comes to Felix the Kit Kat in this situation, I don't want to sound like a bit of a bell end, but in regards to the other two, WONDERSTRUCK and Oz Media, I can get more why Blair would sue them, getting it from an evil, villainous, just malicious perspective, of course, but if I was in Blair's shoes, I can see why she would target them. But when it comes to Felix the Kit Kat, yes, Felix has contributed to the story in some ways, but I just don't think that Felix's name is being thrown about as much as the other two, and I think this does just represent how vindictive and bad of a person Blair is. It doesn't matter how many numbers you've got, it doesn't how much you contribute to a story. If you disagree with this woman, she will come for you. If she thinks that she can take you down in a legal court battle, she will do it, and that is exactly what she is doing with Felix right here. But yes, at this point of time, around November the 23rd, 2023, it was very obvious that Blair was not kidding when it came to suing people, and that does lead us into the next chapter in this timeline from another tweet from Oz Media, where he says, "Lawyer approved tweet. I am currently being sued by Blair, also known as the Illuminaughti, as well as our company Pyramid Entertainment Group PLLC, for defamation." Now yes, this tweet obviously came after Felix's, but of course this was the tweet which mainly alerted everybody to what was going on in this situation. It was now no longer speculation, it wasn't a joke. Felix, Oz, and also WONDERSTRUCK, who hadn't made a tweet, were being sued by IILLUMINAUGHTI, and that of course brings us into our fifth player in this story, MADCATSTER, when he uploaded a video on the same day as Oz's tweet saying IILLUMINAUGHTI sues Oz Media. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, that now brings us to the lawsuit. Finally, we have got here, and finally it is time to go through the first chapter of this lawsuit, because at the current time of recording this video, there are 3 chapters that we need to go through. The first, the redacted, and then the updates. We're going to go through all of it now, but I will just also put in a request. Could you please subscribe to this YouTube channel? I've been away for a long time, I understand that, and I understand that my consistency on this channel hasn't been great lately, but I really do want to start getting back into posting regular content, and I say that every single time, but I'm in a good space at the moment. I'm working on multiple videos. As you can see, the background behind me isn't to do with this video, it's to do with a much more detailed analysis into a very heavy situation, which should be coming soon. But yeah, if you want to watch that video, or watch this video, or any other video, please subscribe, please like the video, and please comment beans down below just to help me out in the algorithm, because I haven't been very consistent lately. But yes, let's actually get into the lawsuits. Yeah, I'm not wearing a hat, and it feels very weird. This is going to last for about 5 minutes because I will sweat and just put that thing straight back on. But yes, let's actually get into the lawsuit, because MADCATSTER in his video does go through the entire thing, providing every single screenshot that we possibly need, and I think it is just time to get into the very beginning of what this lawsuit entails and what Blair and her lawyers are saying in this case. This defamation lawsuit against WONDERSTRUCK, Oz, and Felix the Kit Kat. So as you can see in this document here, it states that this is a court document from the district court in Colorado, where the case features Blair's own company and Blair herself, who are the plaintiffs, up against the 3 individuals who have been redacted in this document, which is the 3 people that I just mentioned. And the very first thing that you should note from this document is that it is actually an amended document, which means they originally submitted a lawsuit document, and then they decided to amend that lawsuit document, which could be for a whole different multitude of reasons, and I personally think the reason that they did this is because their lawyer and Blair thought that their original submission was not good enough, and they believed the court would also think that their submission was not good enough for all of the reasons that we're going to go through today. But to cut a long story short, it's basically an evidence issue. I've gone through this entire lawsuit at this point, and I have basically worked out, as has multiple other people out there, that in this document, Blair and her lawyers accuse the 3 individuals that they are trying to sue here of a multitude of things, saying things such as they committed slander, defamation, and all the general stuff that you could possibly think of, but they don't actually provide any evidence. They just say certain things very vaguely and describe certain events with very weird things, kind of expecting the court to make up a story for themselves, and that isn't a court case. You can't just win a case by saying, this thing happened and I'm not going to really describe any of it, you can just fill in the gaps. That isn't going to work in a court case. It might work on a Twitter document of where you've got, I don't know, trial by Twitter, but when it comes to an actual legal case in Colorado, it's not gonna fly, and based on everything that I have seen in this document, it very much just shows how weak of a case Blair has here, but also just how malicious that she is. But yeah, let's continue. Amended complaint plaintiffs, being Blair, will be collectively be referred to as the plaintiffs herein by and through their undersigned counsel, which is obviously Blair's legal team. As it says the law firm there and contains some redacted information, PC submit their amended complaint, the complaint against the defendants, and then it names once again Oz, WONDERSTRUCK, and felixthekitkat, who will also be referred to throughout this lawsuit as defendants. So rather than me repeatedly naming their three names, when it says defendant, I am referring to them, and when I say plaintiff, I am referring to Blair, her lawyers, and her company. Plaintiff Blair is an individual residing in the state of Colorado. Plaintiffs own and operate a popular YouTube channel. I'm not sure if popular is the right word to use there, because currently based on the views, and I'm not trying to be rude here, but based on the views at the moment, it's not looking good. I wouldn't say that this is popular. I would say that this is a hellfire which is constantly burning, and eventually there will just be nothing left. But it then goes on to explain that all of this case is applicable to Colorado law, and the whole case is pretty much concerning a breach of contract, declaration of rights, and specific performance related to the defendant's prior employment and agreements thereout. And this leads us into a very interesting topic which hasn't really been discussed by me much throughout my last few videos, and that is the topic of confidentiality agreements, which is basically you agree to sign something with your employer or with in general anybody, and in that contract it will usually say that you can't say certain things against an individual or against a company. And in this case, pretty much what happens here is Blair apparently, according to MADCATSTER and a lot of other individuals out there, has made all of her ex-employees sign this confidentiality agreement, and what she is alleging in this lawsuit is that they have broken that agreement. Now, we will go more in detail to what that agreement actually fully entails later on in this video, because MADCATSTER does provide some very interesting insight to that. But yeah, let's continue with this lawsuit because it does start to get very interesting from here. Now, in terms of confidentiality being breached, the document goes on to speak about these agreements being breached by Felix, WONDERSTRUCK, and Oz, as they signed these documents in 2021, and they breached them after signing this when they made their statements or actions that they are being accused of in 2023. And when it comes to signing an agreement like this, I can usually understand it when it comes to working for a major corporation, and whilst Blair will probably argue, oh, I am a major corporation, I make millions of dollars on the internet. Now, yes, that is a pretty valid argument to make, and maybe I am just being a bit of a bellend here, but I think there is a staunch difference between running a commentary YouTube channel where you make decent videos. Like, I'm not going to say at one point they were terrible. I actually used to think Blair made some pretty good content, but there's a difference between that and running a very serious corporation or just running a very serious business. As a YouTuber, I know how this thing goes. I understand that a lot of YouTubers like to pretend that they are very good at business and all of the ways that regular businesses work and operate. They like to pretend that we also do that. But for the most part, it's usually not really like that. It is a very messy industry where a bunch of idiots with no life experience have come into power and money, and what do you get? People like IILLUMINAUGHTI. And I really don't believe that there is any need for a confidentiality agreement to be signed here, because I don't believe that editing YouTube videos or doing research really actually provides any risk towards Blair when it comes to these people speaking about the company that they work for. I feel like the only reason that they're signing these agreements is because Blair knows that her own personal treatment of her employees and her friends and just how she acts as a human human being is not and was not and still is not okay. And I feel like she got these people to sign these agreements because they could possibly speak up one day, and the best way she could prevent that is by the threat of silence. Because if they don't take that threat seriously, then they will face severe financial retribution, which we are currently seeing in this lawsuit. But anyway, let's continue with this god-awful lawsuit. It goes on to say that the three defendants basically agreed that they are pertaining to understanding that they are obligated to, and plaintiff's goal, it is to protect its confidential proprietary information and ensure that all employees agree to maintain the confidentiality of IILLUMINAUGHTI'S company information. What is the company information? That's what I want to know. Look, I get it. You don't want people to steal your video ideas, but that's not really a justification to get people to sign these weird-ass agreements. I really don't think that this justifies that. Look, Jacket has edited for me for like 4 years now. She's blimmin' brilliant, but I haven't asked her to sign a confidentiality agreement. No, actually, maybe I should. But fellas, this is where things start to just go from, annoying and bad and immoral to just outright weird. You see these big blacked out areas here? Well, MADCATSTER himself blacked out a massive chunk because he was basically saying that these things stated as supposed facts were actually just a big chunk of Blair and her lawyers writing extremely personal stories about, I guess, Oz, which is completely unrelated to the lawsuit, isn't any form of evidence to back up their accusations of defamation. It doesn't do any of that. It does just seem that they're taking shots and digs at the three people by telling deep and private personal stories. Just listen to what MADCATSTER, a lawyer, has to say about this.
I've redacted it. It looks like a lot of stuff, but trust me, it's really personal. It has nothing to do with the company. And I don't believe it has any place in this lawsuit.
Honestly, yeah, this is just very, very weird. And my personal theory to why Blair and her lawyers have done this is to, I guess, try and paint the three as bad people by giving these personal experiences, alleged personal experiences, ironically enough, and paint them as bad by saying, oh, they did this thing, they did that thing, when the reality is these things have no relevance to this lawsuit. A defamation lawsuit is you proving that you have been defamed by providing evidence and facts. This is just your personal experience and your personal opinion of thinking that these people are possibly dicks. That isn't defamation. It isn't a crime to be a dick. It is just your personal opinion. And I'm not saying the three are dicks, I'm just saying that I imagine that this is what Blair has written in this document, and I think that's very unfair to use that as a way to kind of sway the judge and sway the jury. It obviously won't work, because I don't think that's how the jury works, and I don't think that's how a judge would work, but obviously it is a very sneaky and just outright wrong tactic to use here. But then the lawsuit progressively gets more silly when it says, in June of 2023, defendants were sent cease and desist letters. On July the 25th, 2023, a defamatory video titled The Fall of IILLUMINAUGHTI, YouTube's biggest bully, was posted about plaintiff. Now, I have spoken about this referenced video in a previous video, but basically, this is a 2.5 hour video from Cruel World Happy Mind made about Blair, and this video was not made by Oz or Wonderstruck or Felix. It was made by a commentary YouTuber in the same genre of Blair, speaking about a topic quite like Blair would do with literally any other topic out there. But this is where it gets ridiculous. In that video, defendants speak publicly about their intent to publish another defamatory video about IILLUMINAUGHTI. Now, this being said in a actual legal document as a way to try and prove anything, it's just absolutely balmy to me, and allow me to speak the facts to why I think this. Number one being, as I said, Cruel World Happy Mind is being mentioned in this lawsuit for creating a video. Not the three others, another individual curated this video, and I know that I am mispronouncing that word. You don't need to tell me in the comment section, I cannot speak the English language, but yes, this individual who is not involved in this lawsuit made this video, not the defendants. Which to me basically makes the involvement of this statement null and void instantaneously then, but let's continue with the facts. Fact number two being, it's called a defamatory video like it's a fact, But that is ultimately the opinion of Blair and her lawyer, and the only reason that they're saying this is because the video presents Blair in a negative light, but ultimately that's just an opinion. Throughout this entire lawsuit, they keep on calling things defamatory without actually saying why it's defamatory. It's just, oh yeah, this thing that made my client look bad and wrong, defamatory. This thing that made it look terrible, defamatory. Why? You are in a court of law. You need to prove to your judge and jury why that thing is defamatory. You are here stating your case, but then when you're in this actual court case, that's when you provide your reasons. What I hear here is Blair and her lawyer just repeating their personal allegation without actually doing the court case, because the court case is you've given your allegation at the starting and now you need to prove it. But all they're doing is just repeating the original allegation. There is no evidence here whatsoever that this was defamation. But then thirdly, the main point made here is that in the video, defendants speak publicly about their intent to publish another video. Now the language here is very, very key. Their intent. They intend to post another defamatory video. By firstly them deeming it as defamatory is quite wild to me, because the video doesn't exist. There hasn't been a video posted. So they are once again just calling something defamatory without any evidence whatsoever. But also, again, this video doesn't exist. This is not a form of evidence to provide to the jury or judge. This is just them merely speculating. There hasn't been a video published, and even if a video had or will be published, that does not necessarily mean it's going to be defamatory. But they are basically making it sound out to be that way when this thing doesn't even exist in the first place. This entire section is just outright insane to me, and honestly I feel like the judge and jury are going to see this and just think this is ridiculous. But then moving on, Blair's lawyers go on to speak about what Oz and the others have actually said and done, and this is where it starts to get a little bit juicy. For example, it says here that Oz in his video speaking about Illuminati said that he wouldn't be surprised if this video would be used in a courtroom, and also the video includes allegations of theft. Well, obviously, that's incredibly ironic because this video is now being used in a courtroom. But then it moves on to WONDERSTRUCK situation, and it says prior to defendant moving to Colorado in around May of 2021, Miss Illuminaughti purchased a car that she allowed him to use as his own car under the assumption that he would repay those funds, which Miss Illuminaughti and defendant WONDERSTRUCK agreed and understood to be a loan prior to her transferring the title to him. In or around the latter of May 2021, plaintiffs hired defendant. However, defendant violated multiple policies. Once again, it doesn't actually say what these policies are, but then it goes on to say, despite performing none of his job functions, WONDERSTRUCK was paid throughout his time at Blair's company. And once again, we, as I said, have the exact same issue that is coming very, very common throughout this lawsuit of there being no evidence, just mere descriptive words. But this bit here is honestly one of the more sinister parts of the lawsuit, because it honestly to me seems like a little bit of a lie. Not even a little bit, it just seems like an outright lie and fabrication of the truth. Because of course, the video here being referenced to is my response to Illuminaughti Exposed. This was a video uploaded by WONDERSTRUCK 9 months ago. And in this video, WONDERSTRUCK speaks about the thing that was just mentioned in the lawsuit, his work ethic. Pretty much, WONDERSTRUCK in his video responded to Blair's response video to everything, where she speaks saying that pretty much WONDERSTRUCK did absolutely no work, and this rhetoric has now been repeated in this court case. But what I find really strange about this is WONDERSTRUCK has now proven this to pretty much be fabrication of the truth. But he hasn't just recently done that, he proved that 9 months ago in his response video, yet this still remains in an amended lawsuit lawsuit 9 months later. And I'm just going to play this clip from Wonderstruck, which is quite long, but I think you need to hear it for the sheer context of how much of an outright lie this part of the lawsuit is.
On June 7th, 2021, I was hired by Blair starting at $50,000 a year as she stated, which was a number that seemed rather life-changing to me. At face value, I'm sure anyone who saw this viewed me as someone who had to cut a few clips together and everything was happily ever after. That is what I personally expected. However, I will explain that this was not the case regarding my employment, as I was soon to find out.
During his employment, he never took advantage of any of the benefits that were made available to him.
The reason I did not use any of these benefits was because I was employed for roughly 60 days. I had just moved to another state. I barely even knew the roads and where to even go to eat. I wasn't focused on doctor visits, the dentist, and unless I turn 85 years old, I can't really use my 401k. The only thing that I can think of was the groceries that the LSA covers, but as I stated before, I'm a rather independent person, so I didn't need Blair to particularly buy me groceries. I also find it unnecessary that she goes out of her way to explain the volunteer reimbursement program she has. If I didn't use any of the benefits, why is it necessary to go into detail about them? Was I expected to, in the middle of moving to a new state for the first time since I was 7, volunteer at a soup kitchen to pass the time?
The content for Wonder to edit was dependent on me being able to live stream. During this time, I unfortunately only had 2 streams for him to work on, which Wonder would have been able to produce about 4 videos from. Wonder did not meet the deadlines for either stream. Despite this, I kept him on payroll, I continued his pay, even though no work had ever been completed. Although there was only a minuscule amount of work for Wonder to do, he still managed to act up within company spaces. He made inappropriate comments on forms that were visible to other employees, he didn't complete tasks that were assigned to him, and he failed to follow company protocol. I have a strict policy regarding formal disciplines, and within his short time of working with me, he had already met the criteria for termination.
After hearing this, I'd assume you'd attribute me as someone with a very poor work ethic, and I honestly would not blame you. However, while Blair is being very anecdotal here, I'd like to provide receipts that prove the following. Proof that I was not kept on payroll and I was fired before my deadline even happened. These were not short clips. The comment that I made on a forum that was grounds for termination, Blair leaving out how long it took her to actually provide content to edit, Blair leaving out that I had asked for work and various other aspects, my deadline extension due to my computer editing software corrupting, not me being lazy, me flying to another state to meet said deadlines with plane tickets provided, and again, proof that I was fired before my deadline even happened. Before we begin, I'd like to state that I was informally fired on a phone call July 27th, and that I received my final severance letter July 30th. But as you can see here in private DMs with an editorial manager, my deadline was extended to August 2nd. I was fired within my deadline. To add context, Blair had not streamed for the entire month of June, and come the further end of mid-July, she had finally streamed. I was given one stream that would result in 2 videos having 20-minute plus durations on both videos. So for context, these were not short clips, rather 20 to 40-minute chunks of content, which is exactly what I signed up for. This in itself was not a problem. However, upon getting far into making the video, my editing software corrupted.
Said in a statement that it was pleased with the ruling, which would allow it to continue to use treatment. So that's from this article.
I was staying with my dad in Texas, which we'll touch base on why in a little bit here, and only had my laptop, which had never had an issue before. I had had this laptop for roughly, I want to say, a year at this point. Never once had I run into a software corrupting issue. So I reached out to an editorial manager explaining the situation. They asked that I take PTO, but instead I held off because Oz Media said he could get my PC fixed. I was running out of time, but my deadline initially was July 26th. So last second, I flew to Colorado to get my computer just so I could turn around and fly back. It was at this time I had noticed I was locked out of the editor files, which I found odd given that I was still within my deadline, but I didn't exactly know what was happening. I just had figured it was an error at the time. I'd like to make note that the other editorial manager explained to me that my deadline at this time had actually been extended to August 2nd. Editorial manager reached out to me on the 26th saying we needed to talk. For one reason or another, this conversation got pushed to July 27th. I believe this was just due to a simple scheduling conflict. I believe by the time I was able to take a call, that like when I had seen the message, they were busy for the rest of the day. So it just got pushed over to July 27th. It wasn't like I was like ducking the calls like, oh my goodness. It was here on this call that I was fired for explicitly not meeting deadlines, which I find highly confusing due to once more more, I must reiterate that my deadline was August 2nd. Not to be redundant, but I'd like to remind you that I flew to another state just to meet this deadline for my boss, who was constantly subtweeting about me. You can see is acknowledged even by one of her own managers, and they told me specifically that this was not okay behavior. A few days later, after being fired on July 27th, on July 29th, Blair came to Texas to revoke a car in the middle of the night, which she claimed I breached contract, which we will get to in a moment as to how this was not the case. But first, I want to just take a moment that I hope this sheds light into just how far I was willing to go to ensure that these video deadlines were met. That I was willing to fly exhausted and tired and not on great terms with my boss to fly to another state just so I could meet a deadline. I sincerely cared about my job, and I feel it is just extremely wrong to paint me in a light as some lazy individual who just didn't care at all.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I understand that that was a very, very long clip, but as I said, you needed the full context, and I think that context very much does provide that Blair and her lawyers aren't just wrong, but in my opinion, they are just outright lying. What is said here is not true, and it confuses me to why this allegation is even in this document when Wonderstruck has already disproven it, because he's only going to disprove it in the future when he combats this part of the lawsuit. So why jeopardize yourself like this? And to me, it's because Blair and her lawyers are desperate. It's so obvious that they don't have a case, and this case that they're trying to make is just coming from a place of malice and vindictiveness, and they are just trying to get revenge on these three individuals who they clearly have identified as the main people who ruined their reputation, which is absolutely not the truth. Blair, you ruined your reputation back when you called out Legal Eagle. This was the very moment that everybody realized who you truly are. Not because of Oz, not because of Wonderstruck, not because of Felix, not because of the Clique or any of the other guys at Sad Milk, but because of your own actions and how you have acted to everybody over the last 4 years. And according to MADCATSTER, in his own personal opinion, the statements made by Blair in this lawsuit are defamatory because this sort of thing could actually affect Wonderstruck's possible employment opportunities in the future. And I'm going to be real with you, I think he has a pretty valid point there, because if I'm looking to hire somebody to do a job and I ask around being like, is this person good to work with? Like I find out a friend's worked with somebody and I want to hire that person. I say, hey, did he do a good job for you? And that friend tells me a lot of negative things. I may not go and sign that person. I may not go and hire that person because, you know, hiring people does cost money. I've got bills to pay. I've got people to feed and stuff like that. And I don't want to risk my finances by hiring somebody that does have a negative reputation. And ultimately, it very much seems that Illuminaughti deliberately has tried to tarnish and damage Wonderstruck's reputation, which is incredibly ironic because that is basically her case against the defendants. It's absolutely wild because I genuinely think that Blair could be countersued when this case is over. But then moving on, the next part of the document is Blair's lawyer stating that payments were agreed to be made on or about July 2021 when it comes to Wonderstruck's car. And this is again very convenient wording from them. I believe that they have deliberately not given the accurate date here, which is very available to them. They're acting like they don't have it, but they do, because I've got it right here. The date was July the 15th, 2021. And the reason that they've not said this is because the car that Wonderstruck had was repossessed by Blair only 13 days later. And this is typically quite unusual when it comes to not paying a bill. Typically, in most cases, I personally, from my own experience, have had it where you get around 31 days notice to pay something up. If you don't pay a bill, they're not going to come and take away your things instantaneously. If I don't pay my council tax, the bailiffs aren't going to come around on day one. They're probably going to come around 2 or 3 months in. That's how it works. You get time to pay back your debt. And I feel like the reason that they're not saying this is it's because they know what they have done here isn't a usual thing, and it can look like a quite calculated and malicious thing. For there to be only 13 days after the payments were meant to be made, this looks incredibly strange, and I think the judge and jury would see this and think there clearly was something going on here which was quite malicious. And I personally think that will lead to the jury's heads being swayed even more. I mean, if their heads weren't swayed completely at this point, because let's be real, I'm not actually trying to make Blair look terrible. I really am not. I'm going through every piece of provided lawsuit that I have, fairly analyzing it, but all it is just complete and utter bollocks. But also, Editor Fraser coming in here to say there is actually a little bit of a mistake on my part, but actually has kind of came into my benefit here, because basically how this is laid out right here is completely confusing to what actually was broken in the contract. As you can see, it says, despite agreeing to make payments and keep the car in Colorado on or about July 2021, defendant left to Texas with the car and never returned. Now, conveniently, this leaves out the story that WONDERSTRUCK went to Texas to actually go and visit his father, not to permanently stay there, but just to visit there. And this whole bit here in this lawsuit is very weirdly worded, because it says, despite agreeing to keep the car in. It doesn't necessarily have any details to what that actually entails in terms of the agreement of the car staying in Colorado. Does that mean it has to permanently reside there, or does that mean that it can actually leave the state but also then have to come back to the state? And as you will learn in a future part of the video, this bit here is deliberately worded like this in my opinion, because how they have made it is extremely vague, and I think honestly designed to deliberately confuse you, and you will find out what I mean much later on in the video. But I thought I should just come in here and explain that in post edit, just so you understand that it's not also to do with the payments, but it also is possibly to do with Oz leaving Colorado with the car. But then we move on to where the lawyers speak about the extensive damage done to the car, which shockingly enough once again removes even more context when it comes to the condition of the car and why it was in that state. And once again, I'm going to play another clip from WONDERSTRUCK, because seemingly Blair didn't want to say what WONDERSTRUCK had to say when it came to explaining these things. WONDERSTRUCK, his video from 9 months ago, that just doesn't exist in Blair's book, and that's why she is saying these things, because she is clearly trying to manipulate the truth in this court case, and I'm not gonna allow it.
Blair puts in her drive that the car had bottles, a few wrappers, and some clothes. What she fails to show in her video is my skateboard, both my Sad Milk and WONDERSTRUCK Guy play buttons, my $800 GoPro set, and a whole list of other items I was prohibited from obtaining, which I found out recently from Oz. These items were subsequently thrown in the trash after some time. I'd like to touch on the condition of the car as well. It looks bad, and truthfully, if I saw that, I would turn my head as well. I would think this is a madman who owned this car. But I'd like you to remain open-minded that I was basically living in this car due to not being able to stay in the same house as Blair, as my therapist recommended specifically that I do not do that. I did not have a home to go to, and I was on my dad's couch most of the time. As for the cracked windshield, that was due to a semi-truck pulling out in front of me on the highway.
Oh, no, in the sort of gesture that we're trying to do.
Councilmember Kevin Wright.
There's a lot of people out there who have probably experienced it. Sometimes semi-trucks will get pebbles stuck in their flaps and they will fly and they will ding the windshield and it's a crack. It sucks, but it happens. There's no way I myself could have pulled off this effect on this car. In regards to the glove box, I really don't know what happened. I went to get something out of the glove box and it just popped off. It's a small piece of plastic, and the BMW dealership in my town was more than happy to fix these issues when I visited them, which is a record Blair herself has. When I got the car, I was told it was insured via the BMW dealership, so I would have to have my own insurance, and then BMW had their own separate insurance. So if something happened with a car, I could go to the dealership, show the issues, and they would happily fix the issues for no charge at all. Which again, Blair has a record of me visiting the dealership due to the car blowing a flat due to A, low profile tires, and B, a pothole I didn't see due to nighttime and rain. They told me I could bring the car car back whenever I please, and I intended to fix these issues before going back to Colorado, as returning it in such a condition would make no sense. After authorities were sent to my house the following morning, I explained the situation and the officers relayed their official opinion that I should cut contact with Blair.
So yes, I think this does very much clear up nicely about all the things that Blair complained about when it came to the condition of her car in this lawsuit. Obviously, when you read what she is saying here, it does not look great, but Wonderstruck, a human being, explains a human being thing of when people drive cars, things can happen to that car. Cars aren't the things that only get damaged if you're driving recklessly. You can just have annoying things happen. A rock can fly up and chip your windscreen. This is something that happens. Cars get damaged all the time. Everybody knows somebody or has a car that has been damaged in some way. This was not Wonderstruck's fault, and he even said in his video that he was going to get it fixed, but could not get it fixed because Blair turned up at 3 in the morning to repossess the car. And Blair using this against him in this court case is just hilarious because Wonderstruck's explanation with proof, as I said, came out months before Blair published this amended document. And honestly, there are two pathways that we can go when it comes to this of Blair either doesn't look at any of the criticism of her on the internet, or Blair is either so ignorant that she just generally believes that she is in the right no matter what, no matter how many screenshots or people speak up against her, she is always in the right. And honestly, I think based on what is being said here, that is far more probable than Blair just not looking at any of the things said about her on the internet. I think it is very clear she knows what is said about her, and I think she just refuses to accept any of it, which is quite ironic considering that she is a commentary YouTube channel who gives judgment on pretty much everything. But yes, let's continue. The legal document continues with more weird statements such as, in or about May of 2023. I mean, I don't really know why these people are struggling so hard at writing down accurate dates. What does in or about May of 2023 mean? What are the boundaries for in or out here? Can I say in or out of a 2-year space of May of 2023? Is that how we're going to do these things? Because in or out doesn't mean a detailed date. You're just saying it might have been around that time. It might not have been around that time. Why are we doing it? Because this isn't a serious document. Defendant Wonderstruck created a 1 hour and 20-minute video with Oz Media, and what's crazy about this is that video is still available and they could have just published the date if they really wanted to, but they're so lazy that they're unwilling to just go and look at a YouTube video date. It's so unbelievably hilarious that this is something that they just weren't willing to do the research on. It's very minuscule, but I think it really does just sum up Blair's lawyers. But yeah, obviously they're making it out that Wonderstruck and Oz Media made a video together, and what they're referring to is this video that I've already referenced to throughout this video right here. And honestly, I think this is quite insane of a thing to say, because when it comes to actually featuring in this video, this hour and 20-minute long video, which they did specify, Oz is barely in the video for longer than like 5 minutes, and I find that quite hilarious that they don't mention that, but they do mention the video length. It's like they're just trying to manipulate the truth even more, because by saying, oh yeah, he was in an hour and 20-minute video with Wonderstruck, it makes Oz look, I guess, worse in this case, when the reality is he barely featured. I don't know why Oz is being mentioned here. Yes, this video does exist. That doesn't mean it's slanderous. It's a person giving their opinion, but of course, any real sense of logic doesn't work in Blair's lawyer's world. How it's described here is like they were collaborating on some big hit piece, but the reality is Wonderstruck's video is just him simply responding to Blair's receiptless claims about him by him himself using receipts. It's really confusing to me. Is Blair allowed to speak about these individuals in a YouTube video, but they're not? Where's the logic there? Where's the fairness? Freedom of speech is a massive thing, and these people were just demonstrating their freedom of speech, and I do believe that the lawyers will see that and think, yeah, fair enough. She gave their opinion, they gave their opinion. What's wrong with that? It's a healthy it's a conversation. But then, somehow, it just continues to get even worse. Both defendants make the following claims: that Blair stole Wonderstruck's car, that Blair committed wage theft, when in reality Blair simply deducted taxes out of his earnings and other claims. claims. What does that even mean? You are the one writing this legal document as a way to prove somebody is defaming somebody. Tell us what "and other things" actually is. I can't just make up in my mind what they've done. The judge, the jury, they can't. Now, the only reason they're saying this is because obviously they want to make it out to sound more mysterious, more villainous. They did all these other things. What things? I don't know, because they've not f***ing told me. I genuinely am so shocked that an actual paid lawyer went and wrote this document. I genuinely think I could have wrote a better document and a better defense for Blair, and I think everything she has done is absolutely despicable. And also the bit of the document where it says that WONDERSTRUCK and Oz alleged that Blair stole their car. Yeah, I actually did the research into that. I went and looked at the transcript of WONDERSTRUCK's video and searched the word steal, and look, shock horror, you get 0 results. So how about we go and search another word? Instead, let's search stolen, and oh, you get 1 result, and it's Oz saying this.
Blair touches on the subject of a BMW she purchased for me due to my old car dying and wanting to help a friend out. I'd like to clarify I did not ask Blair to do this. In fact, I insisted on our first call the exact opposite. I am not a luxurious person. I like nice things like cozy homes, but the most expensive car I have ever owned was a $5,000 Miata, and that was a surprise gift from my dad after my first car got stolen.
That is literally the only time the word stolen was used throughout the entire hour and 20-minute long video, because these two aren't idiots. They know if they said that Blair stole the car, it would be probably some level of defamation, because yes, she repossessed the car. But shockingly enough, fellas, it's not me just thinking that she repossessed the car based on what Blair has said. No, I'm thinking that because that is what WONDERSTRUCK and Oz said in their video word for word.
You now know the events that led up to July 29th, where the car was repossessed.
As you just heard, they said Blair repossessed the car. So this outright just proves that Blair is lying in her document once again. Once again, this is more fabrications of the truth. Does she genuinely believe that this is going to fly in court? If a mere commentary YouTuber can prove that, what does she think that a lawyer can do when it comes to this? MADCATSTER is calling this out. I'm calling this out. And of course, the lawyers of Oz and WONDERSTRUCK and Felix will probably also call this out. It goes on to say, during the video, both defendants openly state that they are aware of the non-disclosure language of their agreements, and after the video was produced, Miss Blair sent a cease and desist to defendant. He reacted by starting a GoFundMe page, seeking money to pay for legal fees. And in my opinion, this is just another personal thing being put in here which has absolutely no relevance whatsoever. A GoFundMe isn't defamatory. It's not a crime to have a fundraiser. Fundraisers have been around since the beginning of time. This is just a regular, normal thing. I think all this is here for is to just openly shoot them down and mock them and just say, ha ha ha, I've got more money than you. This is just a cruel part of the lawsuit which is designed to make WONDERSTRUCK look financially less well off than Blair is, and I think it's just despicable that this is even mentioned. It has no relevance to the lawsuit. It should not be in this lawsuit, and it is just outright a bit outrageous that they're putting this in here. But then again, the entire lawsuit is outrageous. But then we move on to the next part where it speaks about the final person in this lawsuit, and that is defendant Felix, a former employee of the plaintiffs. Mr. Felix is in violation of the agreement by turning over private messages between he and Miss Blair to a YouTuber to exploit in a video made to slander plaintiffs. Regarding these messages, defendant Felix edited selectively picked messages to create the appearance that Blair made statements that she did not. Wow, isn't that absolutely terrible? It really is awful that you do that, Felix. You should be ashamed of yourself. Now, what is Blair and her lawyers actually referring to here? Well, she's referring to The Click. The Click made a video speaking about Illuminaughti and his previous experiences with her, previous negative experiences, I should say, and in this video, he says this.
And if this wasn't enough, here's a former staff member of hers getting paid to sift through raw audio recordings of me looking for dirt, more specifically the R word. I need you to work with this person to help me find click saying the R slur in Sad Milk's raw audio. I can do that, just let me grab a shower and I'll be down. She claims he said it in a Sad Milk video, but can't remember which one, and she's over her head. I'll pay you $200 to find it, and here's the payment. I mean, there's just an example. I'm sure there's more.
Now, firstly, I should just say this is an outright extremely weird thing to do. Illuminaughti is genuinely insane. Why would you do this? I mean, very, very, very weird behavior, but that was for a previous video for another time. But yes, as you can see in the messages that the click is referring to here, this is the messages that Blair is referring to in her lawsuit. It is censored here, but that was because the click wanted to protect Felix, but Blair knew that that was her messages with Felix, and she decided to sue because of this. And reminder, in the lawsuit it says that these messages are out of context and says things that she did not. But this is again just another lie, because Felix actually came out in response to this and posted the unedited messages between him and Blair, speaking about paying him to find certain messages. And as you can see here, it's a much longer conversation, but this context actually, in my opinion, makes Blair look even worse. Blair starts by saying, "Hey, are you still short on rent? Because I've got money and you don't." No, but to me, this instant starter is quite wild. It's, "Hey, you still broke? Are you still broke? Because I've got a job for you, baby." And then Felix says, "Rent no, electricity and phone yes. I am at -$2 right now. No idea what I'm doing for lunch tomorrow, but I'm at the I'll figure it out phase of my life," which is obviously quite it's sad, and I genuinely hope Felix is in a better position now. But obviously Blair saw this and she thought, person in financial position of vulnerability, I can exploit this in the best possible way of getting them to do all my dirty work and pay them the money that they, need. Blair says, "I've got something for you, but it's a little bit tedious." We're going to ruin the life of another content creator that I was once friends and worked with. Felix, I mean, my life is nothing but tedium, so, I can do it. And then it devolves into the conversation that we saw before, of Blair being like, "Hey, could you go and find these messages, please? I really need them, and I'll pay you 200 smackaronis." It is just, in general, like, quite despicable. She has taken advantage, in my opinion, of somebody in not a great financial position, and she has made him or asked him to do her dirty work. That is absolutely wild. And the fact that she has said in her court case that I guess that Felix screenshotting certain messages or the messages posted in the Clicks video are not actually what she is saying, it's just an outright lie. We can see it here, and in the uncut messages it makes her look even worse. I am genuinely confused to what the lawyers are even arguing. What do you mean that this isn't what she is saying? I can quite literally see Blair's messages say what they are saying. But also what makes this even more interesting is MADCATSTER, in his video analyzing this document, pointed something out very interesting about this certain part of the lawsuit, where he mentions the dates. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the confidentiality agreement was made in 2021. Felix signed that in 2021. Whereas when you look at these messages, they're from 2020, meaning that Felix was not under contract at this point, and that therefore means that these messages are not protected by the agreement. Now, yes, you can make the argument of he sent them after the agreement was made, but I feel like there is a bit of a grey area here. The messages are content before the agreement was signed, and he sent the messages in private. I really think that this is a bit of a grey area, and MADCATSTER says in his video that this is what would be described as malicious prosecution, because Felix here apparently isn't actually doing anything legally wrong. Whether you agree it's right or wrong to send out private messages of other individuals, legally, this is not a wrong thing to do. And it brings back to something that I've been wondering throughout this entire lawsuit of, why is Felix even involved here? That may sound a little bit wild to say, but when you look at Wonderstruck and Oz, it makes sense that they're in this lawsuit. She was very close to them, but Felix really barely has any contribution to this story. And I'm not trying to downplay Felix's negative experiences with Blair, But in comparison to how much Wonderstruck and Oz have spoken and how they regularly do speak up, it's vastly different to Felix, and I feel like this does just show the sheer malice of Blair. It doesn't matter how much you speak against her. If she thinks she can win a legal case against you, she will try and take everything from you. She will try to financially ruin you. As we saw from the messages, we know that Felix is or may not have been in a good financial position, and Blair is still now trying to ruin his life financially via this court case and the possible damages that he may have to pay if he loses the case. But ladies and gentlemen, I think it's actually time we get into a very important part of this lawsuit, because throughout this whole thing, I've been mentioning the confidentiality agreement, because obviously that is what this entire lawsuit is built on. This mysterious agreement that Blair's employees seem to all have signed, and this is a case of where 3 people have seemingly breached this agreement. Now, MADCATSTER in his video pretty much claims that he does have a lot of inside scoops when it comes to this specific agreement. Now, I couldn't actually find the outright agreement, but going off what MADCATSTER has said, I think his words are very authentic and official, because he has of course got contact with Oz Media and with Wonderstruck and Felix, and his words were that this confidentiality agreement, and yes, I cannot say that word correctly, that agreement lasts for not 1 year, not 2 years, not 5 years, not 10 years, not 20 years, but 25 years. 2.5 decades. That is how long you are bound to this contract. It's basically a gagging order. This is designed to stop you from ever saying whatever personal experience you had with Blair. It's designed from stopping any nasty bits of information from getting out there. It's basically a very, very un-American document. It goes against free speech, and what makes it interesting is when you look up the average length of one of these contracts, it actually says that it's between 1 year and 5 years, and that usually is quite understandable because there may be insider secrets in a company that need to remain secret for 5 years. For example, if Apple are developing a new product, they're going to want that product to remain a secret. So a 5-year secrecy act thing placed on their employees working on the product makes sense, because there will probably be a 5-year development time, and by the time that is now over, they can then speak about it. The product is most likely already going to be released to the public or announced to the public. Whereas with Blair, it's very weird that there is a 25-year agreement. What is possibly going on at her company that requires that level of a gagging order? But going back to the actual lawsuit, it says the first claim of relief here is of course the breach of contract. ... all defendants. Miss Blair and her company hereby incorporate the previous paragraphs by reference as though each were fully set and forth therein. Plaintiffs and defendants have entered into valid and binding contracts supported by adequate considerations. The agreements contain the following language: employee agrees not to use confidential agreement or proprietary data for the benefit of any person, corporation, or entity other than the employer during the term of employee's employment or any time thereafter. Upon information and belief, defendants are in breach of their agreements by not exhaustively suing confidential or proprietary information to defame or otherwise harm plaintiffs. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that this is a reasonable contract, and I think the judge and the jury will see this and think it is not a reasonable contract. There is no need for an editor who is doing some side work, or for a guy who did a little bit of work here and there for Blair, to sign a contract like this. It is absolutely wild to me. But also, let's go back to this entire document. How much in this document has actually been proven to be slander? In my opinion, basically nothing, so I don't actually think this agreement has been breached in any way, shape, or form, because it says confidential information that would benefit other people should not be shared by her employees during employment or after employment. That hasn't happened. So far, all I have seen is personal experiences be given, and Wonderstruck use his own screenshots. That isn't company information, that is just his own personal screenshots of his own messages with other people, and him showing certain things to rebut the things that Blair said about him publicly. And I think the judge and the jury will see this and will see Blair said very, very incriminating things about Wonderstruck, which could make it so he suffers and doesn't get as much employment in the future, and he therefore has the right to enact his freedom of speech in defending himself. He hasn't defended himself by releasing company secrets or doing whatever it says here. He has just simply made a YouTube video where he gives his opinion. And then moving on, the rest basically goes into blame Felix, WONDERSTRUCK, and Oz of destroying her reputation and causing financial damages, and then it mentions all of their statements, which brings up a consistently reoccurring issue throughout this entire lawsuit of what other claims? You're writing a legal document. Tell us what other actually entails, because that is not good legal language. That's just you speculating in a legal document designed to persecute somebody for something they haven't even done. It's complete insanity. And again, what it is saying here is the same thing that it said throughout the document of these three are pretty much responsible for outright destroying Illuminaughti's reputation. And I've noticed something, and MADCATSTER also pointed it out in his video. It wasn't these three that started this entire thing. It wasn't anybody other than Blair that started this situation. Going all the way back to early last year, Blair called out Legal Eagle for plagiarism, which was obviously insane because it wasn't true, but Blair, in response to that, was personally exposed for plagiarism, which then caused a domino effect of not just Oz or Wonderstruck or Felix speaking against her, but hundreds, if not thousands of people speaking up against Blair. This wasn't just these three with a master plan to destroy them. They were just a part of the puzzle of people that spoke up and gave their opinion. They didn't coordinate together to destroy Blair. It was Blair that destroyed herself, and it is hilarious that their lawyers do not mention that here. There is no mention of Legal Eagle in this situation because they know if they mention that, it will absolutely decimate their own case, because it would make it clear that the three defendants have actually not created this big plan to defame Blair, and they just gave their personal experiences. And we are basically at the bottom of this document now, and pretty much from a summary that I can take from it is that this document is just Blair coming at her ex-friends with some serious venom, and a sort of way of saying, if I'm going down, you're coming with me. And the lawsuit basically ends with more accusations of defamation and no proof, and then it goes on to state that the plaintiff prays this court enters judgment in favor of plaintiffs on their claims and includes awards of pre- and post-judgment interest, attorney fees, costs, and whatever relief it deems reasonably necessary. But yes, that is basically the entire lawsuit. It doesn't end there because there are plenty of developments that have happened since, but this is the main part of the lawsuit, the amended lawsuit. But now we need to get into the recent developments, because obviously that all is from around a month or two ago. Now we need to move in to the next part of where Oz Media filed a motion to dismiss this lawsuit, and things only really are now getting started because Blair clapped back and then the judge clapped back. Okay, my friends, at this point of the video, you should have a complete understanding to what this lawsuit is about and why it is taking place. Whether you agree with Oz's points, WONDERSTRUCK's points, felixthekitkat points, or even for some reason Blair's points, you should now know why this lawsuit is here in the first place. And this then leads us into the next part of the lawsuit, and this is the point of where things start to get a little bit canny, a little bit argumentative. Of course, it has been a bit argumentative so far, but this is the point of where Blair and Oz really started to clash in this lawsuit, because Oz has filed a motion to dismiss, Blair has responded to that, and even the judge himself has responded to this, because pretty much Blair is not doing a good job in this lawsuit. And this all begins on the 13th of February, where MADCATSTER uploaded yet again another video about this titled Illuminaughti Lawsuit Dismissal. And this isn't clickbait. There is a genuine chance at this point of the time timeline that Blair's lawsuit could be dismissed because mainly she hasn't provided any evidence whatsoever, and the judge seems to be wary of that. She keeps calling things slander and saying this thing's this and this thing's that, but she doesn't really go through any evidence, any provided documents, or even just necessarily going through the law. She just says her opinion and her lawyer's opinion, and that in a court of law isn't really going to do anything for your case, and Oz clearly saw that, and that is why he has filed a motion to dismiss, because Oz and his lawyers see this case and think this is just ridiculous. This is just Blair being hateful and trying to bring everyone down with her. And I think before we get into Blair's response or the judge's reaction to everything, we firstly need to go through Oz's motion to dismiss. And once again, I think I should just say thank you to MADCATSTER for providing the receipts, but yes, let's get into this. Defendant Oz motion to dismiss. Defendant Oz, by and through his counsel of the law, moves to dismiss plaintiff's amended complaint as his grounds therefore states as follows. Plaintiff's complaint fails to articulate the alleged defamatory statements made, preluding any findings that such statements are plausibly provable false or defamatory. The amended complaint further fails to identify any confidential or preparatory information that was misused by defendant and is therefore similar defective. And this is what I have been saying throughout this entire video. If you come to a court case, you are trying to take somebody down in court, but you yourself cannot provide any evidence, why should the judge or jury be on your side? They have given you plenty of chances to back your case, state your claim, even with an amended document, yet Blair still has refused to give any proof or evidence for any of the things that she is alleging in her case, and Oz and his lawyers clearly acknowledge that. It then goes on to say a very strong statement in plaintiff's entire amended complaint should be dismissed for failure to state a claim upon which relief may be granted. And what they're basically saying here in regards to relief is the relief is what happens at the end of the case if she was said to be found to be right in her case. If Oz was guilty of defamation, he would then, I guess, have to pay up some level of relief, whether that's damages or paying for all the court bills or just things on those lines. In Oz's case here, what he is saying is that there is no way it is going to possibly get to that because Blair hasn't actually provided any stepping stones to getting to that point. Therefore, this whole entire case is just a waste of time, a waste of money, a waste of my time, a waste of your time, a waste of everyone's time, and it should be thrown out of the court. And I think this is a very strong statement to make in the very beginning of their motion to dismiss. If I was the judge reading this, I'd be thinking, they're making some pretty good points here, like, Blair, where the f*** is all the evidence? But ladies and gentlemen, this is only the beginning. We're now about to get into the serious meat and potatoes, the serious juice of this whole motion to dismiss. Plaintiff's amended complaint alleges a hodgepodge of jumbled facts related to a personal and business relationship with defendant. Many of the alleged facts in the amended complaint appear to be irrelevant to the defamation and breach of contract claims. I mean, there's nothing I can really add to this other than saying you know you have messed up in your legal court case when the word hodgepodge is being used to describe your case. I don't think I've ever seen this word in an actual legal document before. And honestly, I can actually understand why it's being used here, because Blair, her whole thing is just a big load of hodgepodge. The claims that are asserted are spare and not pled with sufficient factual information to constitute plausible claims of defamation against defendant by either plaintiff. Plaintiff's breach of contract claim is similar defective without any identification of confidential or proprietary information that was misused in any manner by defendant. Which again, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely true. When you go and look at Oz's tweets at the very beginning of the situation, some of the things that he was saying were just honestly very, very tame. He could have clearly said a lot more, but he held his tongue. He didn't say everything that was on his mind, probably because he knew Blair would attempt something like what she is doing in this court case. Even when you go and look at Oz's video, it is very short and concise and to the point. In this video, he basically says that he's not going to reveal every single piece of information on that day, mainly because he knows he can't legally. And I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I have done an interview of the people involved in this court case, and yes, one of those people is Oz, and I won't reveal what happens in that interview yet, even though you could just skip forward right now, but basically, a lot of the questions that I asked could not be answered because Oz isn't stupid. Oz knows that he could easily get himself into some legal trouble if he was just to go say everything that is on his mind. That doesn't necessarily mean everything on his mind is fake or false or a lie, not any of that absolutely whatsoever. Everything he could be saying could absolutely, and I do believe, to be truth, but obviously when it comes to legal cases and slander, if you don't have evidence for everything you're saying, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble. And with what Oz is saying here, that can now be applied to Blair. She could find herself in hot water if she does not fix the mistakes that she is making in this lawsuit. But what makes this even more interesting is that it goes on to say in this motion to dismiss that Oz and his team actually met up with Blair and her team to pretty much just to have a conversation about all of this, and it seems that Blair was not receptive to anything that Oz and his team were saying. Defendants Counsel previously met and confirmed with plaintiffs regarding these defects, encouraging plaintiffs to amend the complaint to make the matters plain and identify the statements plaintiffs' claims are defamatory, and the confidential or proprietary information plaintiffs contend defendant misused. Rather than supply facts, plaintiffs' amended complaint continues to merely assert threadbare legal conclusions and attempts, but fails to plead defamation in the alternative. And this is just absolutely wild to me because Blair keeps on speaking throughout this legal case that Oz and the others are pretty much attempting to ruin her life, but even in a legal battle between the two, Oz and his team genuinely just gave Blair and her team a chance to make the lawsuit better for themselves so that Oz's team could just merely understand what Blair was even saying. That's how ridiculous Blair's case is. Oz's team wants Blair's case to be clearer so they can actually understand what they are being accused of and why they are being accused of that. Because realistically, my friends, Oz's team didn't need to do this. From what I'm reading in this document right now, I'm just seeing honestly people just being nice. Like there was no need to say, hey, do you want to make your case a little bit more informative and better? There was no need to do that because if Blair's case is terrible, Oz is going to take a slam dunk, and I still think Oz will take a slam dunk here, but this is just them being nice and Blair still not being able to accept any forms of criticism. This isn't just a legal thing here, but this is once again another reflection of Blair's character. Even when somebody tries to honestly help her, she rejects it because it is critical of her. And if you thought the motion to dismiss was over, no, it only continues and gets even worse for Blair. So it starts to go over the allegations actually made from Blair in every detail about her relationship with Oz, and basically every other accusation Oz has made according to Blair's lawyers. But it again brings up the very obvious and standout problem of there are all of these allegations, yet absolutely no forms of evidence to back any of it whatsoever. None of the alleged statements by Oz regarding Blair are plausibly defamatory. The amended complaint is so lacking in the essential details, including exactly what and in what context Oz said anything, that it fails to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. Further, none of the vaguely described statements alleged in the amended complaint pertain to Plaintiff Pyramid Entertainment LLC, and as such, it cannot state a claim for defamation against Oz. And this is something that I've been thinking for this entire situation and legal case of this whole thing isn't just Blair versus Oz and the other two. This is Blair and Blair's company against Oz and the other two. And the thing that I'm wondering is why? Why is Pyramid Entertainment LLC involved in this case? They keep bringing up this breach of contract. They keep saying this is the reason, but they haven't provided any actual understanding to what was breached in a certain contract. And everything mentioned, which was mentioned in this motion to dismiss, is all to do with a personal relationship between Blair, Oz, WONDERSTRUCK, and Felix the Kit Kat. None of this pertains to Blair's actual company, damaging the company in any way. This is just all these people gave their personal opinions on an individual, not a company, an individual. And Blair, I think personally, this is what I think, is only bringing her company into this to try and, I guess, make her case a little bit stronger by including information about allegations about breaches of contract. The reason she's not actually providing any evidence so far, I think, is because I don't really think she has much of a case. I believe when she goes on to make a further case, she will start to provide things here and there, but I think the reason that she hasn't provided that in the first place in the original document or the amended document is because Blair knew that the things that she's going to provide in the future, if she truly has to, is not going to be good enough. And Oz's lawyers know this. They're not stupid. Obviously, so far we've seen they've made a fantastic case against Blair, and they are now, well, at this point in the timeline at least, trying to prevent Blair from having a second amended complaint. And I think that is totally fair, but before I give my opinion on that, let's just read what Oz and his lawyers have to say about this. Further leave to amend should be denied. Plaintiffs have already amended their complaint and should not be granted further leave to amend where, as here, they have and continue to fail to plead plausible claims based on facts rather than threadbare legal conclusions. Now, I genuinely think this is a completely fair statement to make, because why should Blair be given another chance to make another statement of defense? So far, when it comes to the others responding to Blair, they've all made one response for each thing that they've had to respond to, whereas Blair is now getting a third opportunity, seemingly, to make another amended complaint. It just doesn't seem fair to me. I feel like if you're going to state a case, you should state it one time, the perfect case is made, you have your time to come up with a statement, get all of the facts together, and make it. Now, maybe one complaint, one amended complaint, I can understand, but two, I just think is honestly taking the piss. But Blair and her lawyers, of course, disagree with that. Because yes, we are now at the end of this motion to dismiss, and it's very short and sweet, but honestly, I think it does the job. I think it's understandable what the lawyers are saying here, and I think they know that Blair is coming to the end of this case in terms of, I think they understand that the judge and the jury know that there is really nothing here that is proving that their client has committed any forms of defamation or breach of contract. But of course, as I said, Blair definitely disagrees with that, and this is what she said in her response. Plaintiffs Pyramid Entertainment LLC and Blair, by and through their undersigned counsel, hereby submit the following response to Defendant Oz's motion to dismiss. Here we go. So firstly, they start going over the facts involving Blair's and Oz's relationship. I'm not really sure how this is relevant, but then they also start mentioning the allegations of Oz making tweets falsely claiming her of abuse. But again, it brings up another issue of, I just don't understand this statement made here about alleged fake statements by Oz, because there's no details of the tweets that Oz made. There's no context to the tweets that Oz made. It is just saying that they're false and I guess defamatory, and again, it's the same problem that the first amended complaint had and the original complaint had. There is no facts to back up what they are saying here, so why am I, the person reading this document, or the jury or the judge, meant to take this as some form of fact when there is no factual information backing this allegation? It then goes on to mention that Blair has received threats via third parties through Twitter, Instagram, etc., and even contacted the police because of these threats. And I may sound like a bit of a knobhead when I say this, well, that is terrible, and I do feel bad for you. Nobody should have to face this because they were a bellend on the internet. That isn't a justification to go after somebody and threaten them and push them to the point of contacting the police. I understand and agree with that, but again, I don't know why this is in the lawsuits. Oz didn't threaten Blair. WONDERSTRUCK didn't threaten Blair. Felix the Kit Kat did not threaten Blair. Yes, that's obviously a terrible thing, and yes, these people should not have sent these messages, but ultimately, it's not the responsibility of Oz, WONDERSTRUCK, or Felix to babysit people on the internet. In this situation with Illuminaughti, it's not just about these three individuals, and that's what I don't like about this legal case. It's trying to present Oz, Felix, and WONDERSTRUCK as the masterminds behind everything, when, as I've shown throughout this video, this situation is bigger than just those three. This situation applies to so many other individuals who are involved in the situation. You could even argue that I have played a role in Blair's downfall. Other YouTubers that have spoken about this, people like HBomberGuy who spoke about her plagiarism situation. Obviously, I'm not saying what we have done is bad, but to put the blame on these threes and use that with what she is saying here, I don't think is fair, because the people that sent these messages to Blair may not even know who Oz, WONDERSTRUCK or Felix actually is. The only reason that I think the mention of death threats is in this case, and again, it might sound like I'm being a bit of a knob, but the reason that I think it's in this case is to simply make the judge and jury feel bad for Blair, because obviously death threats are bad. Do not send hate to Blair. If you're watching this video right now, please do not do that. You can make your constructive criticism and give your opinions, but what she is stating here is not okay. But it's also not okay to use this as some form of a way to sway the judge or jury against Oz, WONDERSTRUCK, and Felix. But then moving forward with Blair's response, it goes on to mention Oz speaking about his experiences in videos, and once again, I'm confused to why these things are being mentioned, because it brings up the issue that we mentioned earlier of a video that doesn't exist, but also specifies more false allegations, but doesn't actually go into specifics. They just expect the judge and jury to take Blair at her word, and then the exact same issue happens of detailing things being false, but not actually attempting to prove why these things are false, and just states that these things destroyed the reputation of Blair. And I feel like I've repeated this a million times throughout this video, but Blair, the person that destroyed your reputation, was you. Blair's lawyers then go on to say, these false allegations have severely impacted plaintiff's reputation in the YouTube community. Plaintiffs were well-respected documentarians. No, look, again, I know I've said Blair's videos were, they were right. They were alright, alright? They were good. They were decent. I didn't watch every single one, but they were alright. Well-respected documentarian. You're making her sound like David Attenborough. She made videos where she spoke about dodgy people on the internet, and yeah, it's well done. I've made a good video, you've made a good video, but I wouldn't say what. Are we well-respected documentarians? Look, I'm not even arguing from a legal perspective here. I just thought it was funny. I just thought it was funny. So right, let's continue. Well-respected documentarians, a reputation which waning, if not all destroyed, due to defendant's actions. She will be able to establish at trial that she has lost thousands of followers to her YouTube channels due to defendant's actions. What? Sorry, let's continue. Which caused losses of substantial revenues. Blair, the reason you lost thousands of followers and subscribers was you. As we mentioned earlier, this whole thing kicked up with Legal Eagle, but also there are other people out there that have listed their personal experiences with you. There was a video referenced in this legal case alone from Blair where she speaks about Cruel World Happy Mind, and in Cruel World Happy Mind's video she speaks about her very negative experience with Blair. And if you want more details, either go watch her video about that or watch my last video where I go through the entire thing in detail. But yeah, there are countless examples of people out there that have had negative experiences with Blair. Now yes, Oz and WONDERSTRUCK and Felix have somewhat contributed to the negative opinion surrounding on Blair, but that again is Blair's own fault for treating people terribly. Of course, sometimes there can be a real icebreaker moment of where one person says one thing and then suddenly all the previous things from other situations or just new things prop up everywhere, and that is what happened with you, Blair. You lost thousands of followers because of your own actions. And I'm really confused to what she means here when she would establish at trial that she's lost thousands of followers. Blair, we all know that you've lost thousands of followers. What, are you going to pull up your social blade and print it all out and be like, oh yeah, I lost 20,000 followers this week? What's the judge meant to do with that? What's the jury meant to do with that? They're going to be like, all right, okay, nice. Again, none of this is really given any legal ramifications when it comes to the three defendants in this case. None of this really is propping up Blair's case against those people. It's only making me question why Blair is making a response with yet again more issues. It's like she has actually not read Oz's motion to dismiss, and again, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, obviously they have, but there just seems to be a repetitive pattern of behavior from Blair of where she will be criticized and it will seem that she just doesn't take any awareness to the criticism and just completely ignore it. A fine example of that would be recently Blair uploaded a YouTube video, and people acknowledged and realized that about 5 minutes of that YouTube video is just background music and no actual commentary, because it was very obvious that Blair's editors, in a mistake, accidentally muted the audio track or just deleted it, but then they didn't check the video, Blair didn't check the video, they uploaded it on YouTube, and people called this out and were like, this is really, really weird, and Blair didn't respond to this criticism by taking down the video and uploading the actual one where the audio is in the video. Instead, she just ignored it, and the video is still available on her channel. Just look at this.
Some of this is inevitable, but not all of it. Better preparation and a better response could have easily given so many people their lives back, but instead, the wealthy were prioritized over those in need. That's why this disaster wasn't entirely natural. But what about other storms? And why does this keep happening?
Okay, now I played that in my previous video, but I think it is a good example because she didn't take it down, it's still there, and the comments are turned off. It's very obvious that this woman just simply cannot take any form of criticism whatsoever, even in a document like this, where she has been told to provide more evidence by the defendant, and yet she still refuses to. And basically, this is Blair's entire response to Oz's motion to dismiss, and as you can see, it is basically nothing new, and all it indicates to me is that Blair wants blood. Well, not blood, she wants money. By her mentioning the losses of revenue and stuff, I think it's very obvious for what her case actually is, and I think it really does represent why she is doing all of this. She has definitely lost a lot of money in the last year, or a lot of potential revenue, because of her own actions, but she is now trying to put that blame on other people because she simply cannot take criticism and is now trying to get money through the legal system, which is obviously pretty despicable considering she knows the certain financial situations of the individuals involved in this court case. It's disgusting, but at the end of the day, I'm absolutely not shocked by this. And I'm just jumping in post-edit here to say something that I find really ironic about this is that when we go back to that clip that I previously played you of where the audio disappears in Blair's video, when she actually remembered to put the audio in, she's speaking about wealthy people being prioritized, and I just think it's so ironic. Let's just listen to this for a second.
Better preparation and a better response could have easily given so many people their lives back, but instead, the wealthy were prioritized over those in need.
Now, in the context of what we're speaking about today, I feel like this is just absolutely insane to hear, considering the fact that this woman tried to foreclose on somebody, considering this person knows the financial positions of the people that she's coming after. I think it's just despicable and really does just summarize who this person is. She is somebody that does not stand by her beliefs whatsoever. She is a fake leftist, and I find it hilarious that this woman has built up her content on some form of moral grandstanding. And I know that, yeah, you could say I do that, but this woman does it to a whole nother level. And I like to say I at least stand by some of my beliefs. With Blair, it just seems that the entire persona that she has created over the last 5 years has just been complete and utter bollocks. And I get growing and changing, but this woman, she's not grown, she's not changed, she's just a disgrace. And if she wants to use that in a courtroom against me, she's more than welcome to, because I think she's an absolutely embarrassing content creator. But yes, let's get back to the actual scripted video.
Hello, I like money.
But then shortly after this, Oz actually did reply in support of his motion to dismiss, saying defendant Oz, by and through his counsel of the law firm of, replies in support of his motion to dismiss plaintiff's amended complaint as follows. Plaintiff's response to the motion to dismiss cites outdated case law authorities predating the Colorado Supreme Court Warren v. Hull rearticulation of pleading standards. Now, I don't actually understand much law whatsoever, but I think what it is saying here is that in Blair's response to the motion to dismiss, the lawyers refer to certain pieces of legal documents which are now outdated, meaning that it's not relevant to being in this court case. If it is an outdated law, it should not be referred to in this court case whatsoever, therefore making what they are saying completely redundant. But it then goes on to say, requiring a plausible claim for relief based on facts rather than bald legal conclusions, plaintiff cite Warren but fails to address or recognize its central holding. Plaintiff continues to fail or refuse to plead any actual words written or spoken by Oz, by merely set forth legal conclusions that unidentified words were defamatory. One requires more, which is obviously spot on, but is again everything that we have said so far throughout this entire 2-hour video. There is no facts to back what she is saying, it is only her opinion. Rather than setting forth what plaintiffs contend defendant Oz actually said or wrote, Blair's response merely regurgitates vague allegations from their amended complaint, none of which are on their face defamatory or supported by any innuendo sufficient to set forth any claim of defamation as a matter of law. And then it mentions what I said earlier about a YouTube video of someone not even being in the case being mentioned in this document, and how pretty much that is absolutely worthless and isn't a basis of defamation, as they are not the words of the defendants. And in terms of the breach of contracts, it says there was once again no evidence provided, i.e. words from the defendants, and that the plaintiffs have amended the complaint already and refused to cure its defects. Now this was pretty much the entire response from Oz's team, and again, it is a very, very strong response, and I'm not just trying to be biased here. I know it very much seems that, and of course I am. Well, yeah, I am biased to a degree. But when I can see a very good case being made, I am going to acknowledge it. You know, if Blair actually provided some sufficient evidence to back her claims, I wouldn't deny it. I would say, okay, this doesn't look great for Oz. Maybe there's some things that could counter it. But ultimately, Blair hasn't provided anything to even give me some form of confidence in what she is saying. She hasn't done that for this entire year, so I don't think she's going to do that in the future anytime soon. And it seems that the judge partially agrees with what I'm saying, with what the community is saying, with what MADCATSTER is saying, and most importantly, what Oz and his lawyers are saying. So the judge makes a response to both of Blair and Oz by saying, before the court is defendant Oz's motion to dismiss. I have reviewed the motion, the response, and the reply, and I am familiar with the case file and the applicable law. I also note that defendant Felix has more recently filed his own motion to dismiss against Blair. So now, Blair is not just fighting one motion to dismiss, but 2 motions to dismiss, meaning that 2 sets of legal teams have identified Blair's case and seen it as absolute, and I will repeat it again, hodgepodge. It appears to the court that the statements alleged to have been made by defendants that plaintiffs contend are defamatory have not been pled with sufficient specificity for the court to be able to review them and determine whether they are or not defamatory. Basically, the judge isn't just saying that the evidence provided isn't good enough to prove it to be defamatory and therefore it's not. The judge is saying there just flat out isn't any evidence, so they can't even say if it is or isn't. It's just that we can't do our jobs because you've given us nothing, and basically because of that, I guess the case could possibly be dismissed. And they go on to say, whetherfor it is ordered within 14 days, plaintiff may file a second amended complaint. All alleged defamatory statements by all defendants shall be set out verbatim, and the media containing the statements shall be disclosed to the defendants. If the complaint is not so amended, the court will rule on the pending motion to dismiss. If the complaint is amended as set forth herein, they will mute the pending offers to dismiss, and they may, if they wish, file motions to dismiss against the second complaint. Now, personally, I feel like the legal system is being incredibly generous towards Blair. If I was a judge looking at her case, I would genuinely just throw it in the bin straight away. Not just because of there being a lack of evidence, but also just what her case is in general. This whole entire case, as we've gone through so far today, is just a vague load of allegations with yes, no proof, but also just things about personal stories with her ex-relationships with her partner and friends. And I really just don't understand why any of this was put in there, other than to embarrass the defendants. I really do think that Blair's case is extremely nasty and venomous and just absolutely not needed and is incredibly unprofessional. I think she has been very lucky here that she has a patient judge willing to listen to another amended complaint, but I don't agree with that whatsoever, and part of me thinks that the judge also is thinking that Blair's case is complete bollocks, considering that what he said here about they will rule on the motion to dismiss if Blair misses the deadline of 14 days to make a second amendment. And what makes this even more insane is Blair did take that 14-day break to where she could make and file a second amended complaint. But the fact of the matter is Blair did not do that. She did not file a document in that 14-day period. And no, she didn't just allow the motion to dismiss happen. Instead, she defiled the judge and submitted her second amended complaint late. Yes, let's address the elephant in the room. I am wearing a different jumper, and again, the hat is off. The continuity, the continuation, whatever you want to call it in this video, isn't great. But this video has taken a long time to record because there's a lot of things to go through, multiple days. I tried to continue it, like, it's all recorded at the same time, but it's not. Alright, I'm going to break the illusion. I record these videos over a long period of time. Each chapter a different recording. Sue me. Don't do that. don't, Blair, please. But yes, the second amended lawsuit. I think it's time we actually get into that part of the video because that's why you're here. So yes, as I said, Blair defiled the judge. She was given 14 days to respond to Oz's motion to dismiss and even Felix's motion to dismiss, and she did not do that. In fact, Blair responded, as I said, after this 14-day period, which immediately would, to the normal person, be like, oh, wow, this whole thing it's done. It's over. Like, you can't get another chance upon another chance because that's what this Second Amendment is. She is being given another chance, and now she has broken that chance, and now she's going to get another chance. Because, yes, as you can imagine, the broken agreement was still accepted, which to me is absolutely insane. I really don't understand why this judge is so generous to Blair, and it kind of backs my lack of faith in the legal system. The amount of chances she has had is absolutely insane, but yes, it was accepted, and I think it's time we go through this document. Now, I actually have received this full document, so we don't need to keep on referring to MADCATSTER. I will still be using some of his judgment as he is a professional lawyer, but ultimately, we're going to go through this entire document ourselves, and this is a very interesting thing, because this document was actually provided by MADCATSTER, and as you can see, there are a lot of green highlighted pieces of text, and this is where Blair has added additions into this lawsuit. And there are quite a lot of things that we need to go through because obviously the whole purpose of this Second Amendment is to add evidence. The whole thing that the judge said in his statement was that Blair has not provided enough evidence to even allow the judge and jury to do their job. They cannot make an opinion on whether this is defamation or not defamation because they simply do not have enough information provided, and Blair now has to provide that information. And once again, I do just want to thank MADCATSTER for providing this redacted version of the Second Amendment. But yes, enough waffling, let's actually get into this thing. It starts off with the factual allegations, and I'm not going to reread everything because, as I said, we've already gone through some of this, but as you can see, the actual names for the social media handles have been added to this document. Now, this doesn't really add any detail to the things that need to be provided in terms of evidence, but I mean, well done on adding specifics that don't actually do anything to contribute to your lawsuit. I mean, great, I now know where to go follow Oz, WONDERSTRUCK, and FELIX, but yeah, there's a lot of this in this document of where she has added a lot of information, a lot of details, but details that don't necessarily do absolutely anything. Now on page 3, it starts to go back to the details about Oz and Blair's romantic relationship, but now there is a twist as more details have been added. Firstly, it details that Oz and Blair lived together when in a relationship, but after the relationship ended, Blair moved out and purchased her own home in or around August of 2022. Once again, we're dealing with the in or around 2022. I find this quite fascinating because the judge was like, you guys have got to be specific. You've got to be speaking in verbatim. You've got to be given the actual details, and they're still saying in or about. Just give me the date when this happened. Surely you have at least a payment date on your bank account which says this happened on that day. Give me specifics. To me, this just shows that this is an incredibly lazy lawsuit, and that's amazing considering this is the Second Amendment. But I will continue, and there it says Blair decided to sell this home that she moved into and commission a new build home, and defendant Oz and Blair were still good friends at the time, so they decided that Blair could reside with Oz whilst the new home was being constructed. But this is where things start to go a little bit weird, because it says Blair had just undergone surgery and was actively taking narcotic painkillers, therefore her memory was limited during this period. Yes, memory loss is genuinely being used as a point in this amended part of the document. Now, I don't really know the grounds when it comes to memory loss, but I think this is absolutely fascinating. For one reason alone being, why was this not in the original lawsuit if it truly was this impactful? There are going to be a lot of things that we go through, because I've obviously already pre-read this entire document multiple times and wrote a script responding to it, but there's a lot of things in this document where you do ask the question of, why was this not here before. And to me personally, it's because most of the things that have been added are absolute bollocks. If these things were genuine, serious things that were going to be in the case, they would have been there originally. If this is a genuine, serious thing, why was it not there originally? But yes, let's continue with this shenanigans. Or as Oz's lawyer said, with this absolute hodgepodge. Because Oz believed she, being Blair, and Oz to be on good terms, he cared for her for a limited time to help her recover from surgery. Now this is going to become quite a significant part of this document because there isn't any, again, specifics added here. What was the extent that Oz was caring for Blair? Was this a paid position? Does he have qualifications when it comes to caring in that manner? Was it just a friend checking on a friend and every now and again just checking in and being like, hey, you doing all right? Remember to take your medication? Because this is what we need to really know here, the extent of the care. It doesn't detail here, it just says that Oz in limited time helped her recover from her surgery. This could be a whole plethora of things, but once again Blair defiles the judge by not actually saying the specifics. There's a lot of things added to this document where they are completely new parts of the story that weren't there in the original place, and it just brings in further issues of there being absolutely no evidence. And ironically enough, these things can, in my personal opinion, come under some form of defamation, and I think a lot of the people who are the defendants could actually have a great case to countersue Blair. It goes on to say, during this period, defendant Oz told Blair that he had taken a forbearance on his home loan and that if she did not provide him with 6 months of mortgage payments, she was going to be evicted from the house because the bank was going to foreclose on the home. Blair does not remember this episode, but her sister and friend were present who do. They stymied defendant's efforts to coerce Blair at that time. Now this is a very, very serious allegation, and I think this is quite ironic considering that this is placed in a defamation lawsuit, but it follows suit to what I just previously said about there being a lot of allegations that, in my opinion, could be countersued. Because once again, there is absolutely no evidence to back this, and even Blair stating that she does not remember this episode, and her sister is the one, and her friend is the one that is being used as the example. And I should just say, these two are not involved in the lawsuit. They are not one of the plaintiffs up against the defendants. It is just Blair. So me personally reading this thinks that this is redundant. I don't understand why this is in here, and it seems to be a lot of he said, she said, which is perfectly fine given Americans love freedom of speech, but I don't understand why this is being used to attack Oz. In my personal opinion, all this does is create even further problems for Blair, because once again she is defying the judge in not providing any evidence to back her claims, but also I think this makes the case for Oz even easier because he can also say there is once again no evidence and this should be dismissed. But then, ladies and gentlemen, the lawsuit starts to take, honestly, quite like an absolutely insane take, because this is where the whole memory issue really starts to come into things, and I did just drop my script on the floor, but basically Blair goes on to claim that she regained her memories. I'm really confused to what this means. It says Blair had stopped taking these painkillers and regained her ability to retain memories. And it's like, what? Is she Professor X? And it's like a superhero plotline where she lost her powers? To me, this is just an insane thing to use in this court case. And I understand painkillers can cause some levels of memory loss, but from what it is saying here, it almost acts like Blair didn't have her memory for this entire time. And I've seen plenty of people on strong painkillers. My own mother, for example, has had to deal with a lot of surgeries in her lifetime, and I have experienced her on some of the highest dosage of painkillers. And yes, she did have issues of being like fully present, but she didn't exactly just lose all of her memory. And I don't believe that Blair in August of 2022 forgot absolutely everything, because you just need to go and look at her social media, where in 2022, in that month of August, she uploaded over 10 full-length videos. And what's funny is you can also see tweets at that period of time actually referring to things coming up in the future, where she is clearly using her memory. Here she found out something and remembered it enough to tweet about it. Here she tweets in August of 22 about researching and working on a project, which just indicates She remembered that she had to do these things and even make a tweet about it, and she then says here that she will be in pain for the next week, which is fair enough, but she also did upload multiple times that same week, so she clearly remembered to post during that week, or at least just slightly do her job during that week. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not actually denying that the conversation between Blair and Oz about Blair giving Oz money even happened. I don't deny that whatsoever. I just think that this document is trying to present that conversation in an extremely malicious manner. It's trying to paint Oz like some malicious person who took advantage of somebody in a vulnerable position, and I think that is a despicable thing to do. When the reality is, I think how the situation went down was like this. I think Oz was definitely in a financial position of peril. I think he was struggling to make ends meet, and he had a tenant living with him at the time who he also was apparently caring for with no mentions of payment there, so he was doing his job, paying the bills and looking after somebody who seemingly hasn't mentioned any forms of rental payments, and he thought to himself, that tenant is also a millionaire, has lots of money, maybe I could just ask for a favor of, hey, the bank are contacting me, they're saying that we're both going to be evicted if we don't pay this off. I think that is a perfectly fair thing to ask somebody that you are living for, but also, from Blair's own words, caring for. Because also, you have to think of it like this. Imagine if Oz just didn't tell Blair, and imagine they just one day randomly went homeless. Given the position that Blair has detailed herself in, I think that would be more negligent than mentioning it at all. I think if Oz just didn't mention it, and he just allowed that to play out and allowed Blair to no longer have a home, I think he would actually look like the bad guy in this situation. And I think all he is doing here is just being upfront and honest with the person that he lives with. For example, if you live with somebody and you have, say, a council tax bill come in and you haven't paid that, you should alert the person you live with, because you could have the bailiffs come round and taking your possessions, including your tenants, or even worse, you could be evicted from your property because your landlord may think that you're being negligent with the property that you live in. Obviously, when you live with somebody, you need to be upfront and honest. It's not like Oz was the parent of Blair and he was trying to protect Blair. These were two grown-ass adults, one of them being a millionaire, and obviously they should both have conversations about the living situation that they're in. And I think what Blair is doing here is genuinely despicable to present this in some form of coercive manner. I think that is actually quite vile. But somehow this isn't even the worst of it. In fact, it just progressively gets worse and worse. But also, just take note again that there was absolutely no evidence provided with what was said there whatsoever. And again, that in my opinion defiles what the judge was ordering in terms of this Second Amendment. But it does go on to then say in the document that during this period, defendant Oz stopped caring for Blair and she was almost hospitalized because of the lack of care. Now, I was going to say that I don't want to be a dick in terms of responding to this, but I'm going to be a dick because what was said in this part of the document is being a dick to the highest order. It is once again portraying Oz in the worst possible light. Oh no, he left the vulnerable person and no longer cared for them, and they almost went to jail. Went to hospital. Getting ahead of myself. That's a joke, by the way. I don't think Illuminaughti's gonna go to jail. I should just say that for legal reasons. It's a joke. But okay, firstly, we need to go over the details once again of what were the actual specifics of Oz's care. Was it a paid position? Was he actually a registered carer with healthcare qualifications? Or was he just a friend living with a friend at the time? Because another thing to note here is Blair spoke about how she had her friend and sister about. Why could they not care for Blair and not just Oz? But also, you have to think of it like this, and it might sound a little bit rude, but Blair is a multi-millionaire. Why could she at the time not hire a professional carer? I think that is the more responsible thing to do rather than rely on your housemates. I just think that's not fair on a housemate, especially, honestly, and again, it might sound rude, if you're not paying that person. Because the person has already said they are in financial trouble, and I think at that point their priority would be just to be able to remain in the house and work a lot, grind a lot, get a lot of income coming in. And I think obviously the distraction of an unpaid position of caring for somebody who can afford to pay for a carer is a bit of a difficult predicament to be in. But then go on to note that, as I said just now, it says almost. What does that even mean? Like, seriously? What could I go on a recording with some other person's YouTube channel? You know, I slip over and bang my knee and I could say, oh, I almost had to go to hospital because, you know, I almost tore my ACL. I didn't, but, you know, possibly I could have almost done that. What does it mean to specify that you almost went to hospital? Because all that says to me is that you didn't go to hospital and you're now just speculating on that to make it look even worse. And that is something they have done throughout this entire document, as I keep on mentioning. They keep giving vague pieces of speculation and assumptions about things with no actual evidence to back it whatsoever. Did you almost go to hospital? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. The judge doesn't know what that means. The jury doesn't know what that means. And most importantly, the audience and Oz and Felix and Wonderstruck do not know what that means. And then Blair's lawyers go on to say, about the mid to end of August 2020, again, why are there no specifics? Around that time, Blair confronted Oz, who eventually agreed to a payment plan to repay her mortgage payments he wrongfully coerced from her over a period of approximately 2 years. However, defendant Oz later altered the repayment term to 10 years. Now, this, in my opinion, is again another outright lie. When you have a pre-established payment plan in place, that payment plan will remain in place because you have clearly signed a contract to agree a certain thing over a certain time. To then alter that pre-established contract, you will need both parties to agree to it because previously those both parties have already agreed to it. To change a contract, both parties between whoever the contract is with need to agree with it, and Blair would have to have agreed to it, and Oz would have had to agree to it to alter this payment plan, which indicates to me that what was done in this part of the document that they're talking about wasn't actually a malicious thing whatsoever and was just them agreeing to make it a little bit easier for Oz. And fair enough, that's a good thing if they're going to do that. But once again, a nice thing that Blair seemingly tried to do, kind of, I guess it's a little bit nice to an extent, has only been made to be a negative thing because it is now being misconstrued. And also, again, one thing that kind of confuses me here is why is this being presented as a bad thing that Oz asked his millionaire friend for money while she lived with him and he was supposedly caring for her? I know I've already said that, but yeah, I think she does have a right to have to pay some part of the way to living with them, even if it is just a case of him borrowing the money, which it very much seems to have been. Oz was in a desperate position and asked his housemate, who had a lot of money, if she could help him out. She did, and they agreed a payment plan. This isn't a big, serious drama that needs to be dissected. This is just very simple stuff, and it is being misrepresented now in this court case, which is not just disingenuous, but honestly, it's a little bit despicable. But then the next part of this just moves into more personal details about how Blair moved out in Jan 2023 because she felt uncomfortable around Oz, which is kind of wild for me for two reasons. The first reason being, why is this even mentioned in the lawsuit? It, again, is more personal details, which I don't personally believe needs to be here. It then goes into more added allegations of Oz using Blair's computer, of course providing no proof of this, and that Blair was only aware of messages sent between Oz and Wonderstruck about this cheating because of a video where these messages were sent in design to badmouth Blair. Now notice that in this part of the document, they don't actually mention any word of defamation here, and that's because this isn't defamation. This is just two friends speaking about relationship stuff. This is just them chatting shit. Everybody does it, and this isn't a form of slander. This is obviously just people initiating their free speech. I genuinely don't understand why 90% of this stuff is here, and honestly, it's tiring that I've even got to read this stuff because of how utterly pointless it is, and Blair's lawyers obviously acknowledge that because even they just say this is bad mouthing and not actually defamation. It then goes on to reference tweets made by Oz speaking about his personal experiences with Blair, and that these posts were inflammatory and caused harassment and threats towards Blair. Now, this is incredibly ironic to me because when I read this, it basically says to me personally that Blair is saying, or at least her lawyers are saying, you can't publicly speak about this public figure because that can direct forms of hatred towards them. When only a few weeks before all of the situation with Oz and Wonderstruck blew up, Blair was doing the exact same thing with Legal Eagle. She was giving her personal opinion on Legal Eagle, and that directed a lot of negative feedback towards Legal Eagle, despite what Blair was saying was absolutely not true and just even more lies. And what's interesting about this is with Oz, Wonderstruck, and Felix, it seemed that most of their statements throughout this entire scenario was all mainly just their personal opinion and experiences with Blair, whereas Whereas with Blair's statement in her situation with Legal Eagle, it was actually her posting defamatory and inflammatory things about another individual, which did direct negative feedback towards them. So how can you even make this point when your own client is guilty of the same thing, but actually far, far worse? She has an entire channel dedicated to criticizing people, and now she is here complaining when people do the same to her. And I'm not saying harassment is, but what I am saying is you really can't control your audience. You can tell them to not do it, of course, but there are still going to be people that send hateful and negative things. That is just the reality of how the internet works. People may use my video as a way to justify going over to somebody's page and negatively commenting things, but that's not me doing that. You can't then go and sue me because I'm doing that. And Blair, I would honestly apply the exact same thing to you. If you made a video where you give genuine, honest criticism that isn't lies, and somebody went over to the person that you're speaking about's page and commented hate, I don't think that's your fault. I think it's the person that did that's fault. And it goes on to say, after this incident, defendant contacted another former Pyramid employee and then attempted to harass her into disclosing private information about Blair so that defendant could exploit it publicly. And once again, this is another example of there being no evidence to back this and no evidence to prove this even happened. And then something I noticed is that the mention of defendant's intent to publish another defamatory video about Blair is still in this second amended document, which again is just absolutely insane, because it is speculating over something that does not even exist yet, which obviously makes this case even more a defile of what the judge requested in his response to the first amended document and then the motion to dismiss. But then Blair's lawyers go on to speak about Oz's video, which we did go over previously in the last document, but it's actually added a few details here, stating that a false allegation in this video made by Oz was the allegation of embezzlement. Now personally, I feel like context is very important here, but obviously based on everything that Blair has been presenting in this document, she completely disagrees with that, in my personal opinion. Because what Oz actually said in his video to me is not really portrayed how Blair portrays it in her document. Because Oz in his own video said that the word embezzlement was actually never used when he spoke to Blair.
She also would describe to me, and while I can't remember if this exact word was ever used, she essentially explained to me that because she used company funds to assist me, that she had committed embezzlement. And by converting the amount that I owed her into a loan with her company, this would save her skin legally. Now, to most people, that word may not have a lot of meaning, but to me, when I was 11, my mother was incarcerated for this exact crime, a remnant of the 2008 financial crisis. This taught me a very harsh lesson from an early age, but more importantly, Blair was aware of this past of mine. Whether this was used against me, I can't say for certain, but the idea of another person I loved being locked away, but this time for my actions, words cannot describe the guilt that I had. As I briefly stated earlier, Blair used this debt as a promise that this would specifically help mend our relationship, not our friendship, and put us on a better foot. It wouldn't be until a few weeks after signing that document that I would learn that she had already moved on, and had almost everyone in my daily life keep this fact a secret from me. Pressing that this would mend our relationship, that it was the right thing for me to do, that this would also protect her legally and prevent her from getting into trouble with the IRS. She also would describe to me, and while I can't remember if this exact word was ever used, she essentially explained to me that because she used company funds to assist me, that she had committed embezzlement. And by converting the amount that I owed her into a loan with her company, this would save her skin legally. Now, to most people, that word may not have a lot of meaning, but to me, when I was 11, my mother was incarcerated for this exact crime, a remnant of the 2008 financial crisis. This taught me a very harsh lesson from an early age, but more importantly, Blair was aware of this past of mine. Whether this was used against me, I can't say for certain, but the idea of another person I loved being locked away, but this time for my actions, Words cannot describe the guilt that I had.
So yeah, this is a bit different to what Blair was actually portraying in her document. The context just is that Oz has a story from his childhood which really seemed to vibe similar with what Blair was saying, and in his previous experience in his childhood, that was embezzlement. Now, he doesn't directly go on to say that Blair was doing embezzlement, he just said that that is what it sounded like based on a previous experience of embezzlement. And remember, the most important part is that he said that Blair never used the word embezzlement herself. The only person that used it was Oz, describing a previous situation to relate to what Blair was saying to him allegedly. But then the document moves away from Oz and starts to speak about Wonderstruck once again and discusses the car situation with a little bit more context. And ladies and gentlemen, by context I mean just personal stories which honestly has no relation and reasoning to being in this document, and also more things added that just require evidence, and there obviously being no evidence to back that up whatsoever. But a key thing that the document adds here is something incredibly personal, and honestly, just I don't get why this is here, but again, it just seemed that Blair is trying to make everybody else seem bad in this situation by her saying, after Blair left the state, Wonderstruck texted her stating that he wanted to unalive himself. Now, Blair throughout this entire saga has had a very consistent pattern of just adding in needless personal situations into these things which just hold no context whatsoever. I don't know if this is even true, because again, there is no evidence to back this, but even if this is true, why is this in the document? This isn't slander, this isn't defamation, this isn't a breach of contract. And the ironic thing is that Blair throughout this entire document complains that people leak messages and stuff like that, but here, Blair is leaking an incredibly personal message to the public. But it's not like she hasn't done this in the past. She also has been guilty of leaking personal information to the public whilst complaining that other people out there leak things. It's incredibly hypocritical, and it's just outright hilarious in a really disturbing way that she would even try to use this as a way to score a point. She then tries to make herself sound like the good guy in this situation, saying, fearing he would follow through on his threat, Blair contacted the police department to perform a wellness check on Wonderstruck. After the wellness check, defendant contacted Blair, stating that she should not contact him any longer, and she abided by this request since the date it was made. Approximately 1 month after the above occurred, defendant Wonderstruck's father sent a demand letter seeking personal belongings from the vehicle. In or about of August 2021, once again, why is there no specification here? What they're about to detail is that Blair recorded a video, and if you record a video on your iPhone, or I believe on any phone, it will give you the date that you took that video or photo on. So why is there just no specification here? It's because she and her lawyers are incredibly lazy once again. But yeah, it says that Blair filmed an unpacking of the vehicle, and Oz can be heard and seen in this video. While unpacking the vehicle, Blair found documentation of Wonderstruck's intent to permanently relocate to Texas, despite assertions that he would be moving to Colorado and working with Pyramid and Blair. Now I'm going to ask two important questions here. Why is this relevant, and where is the proof? In terms of relevance, I don't understand why Wonderstruck's possible move to Texas would have actually even mattered, because again, this is another example of speculation based on something that did not actually come to be or happen at the period of time of where Wonderstruck was under contract. It merely states that these were plans. Okay, I plan to do things all the time that never happened, but again, there is also no evidence of these plans. But secondly, as I said, where is the proof of this? And I will keep on saying that, but also, again, just send him his things, because obviously, as we know, Blair did not do that, and it really makes me confused to why this is even mentioned in this second amended document. She says that she recorded herself unpacking the vehicle, so where did these items even go? Because what's funny about this is, it doesn't go on to say that Blair attempted to give the items back, it just says, oh, she recorded her unpacking the car, and that's the last mention of that in the entire document. So in my opinion, this just gives Wonderstruck a bit of a slam dunk. This is just him being able to say, you acknowledged the items, you acknowledged the request, and you still did not follow through with that. So this amended document is only making Blair's case even worse. But then it goes on to make more vague allegations about Oz and Wonderstruck, saying that defendant was virtually silent until defendant contacted and they discussed and created a plan to obtain revenge on Blair. And I'm gonna say it for the millionth time, where's the proof of any of this? Because again, this whole second amended document is there to provide evidence so the judge can actually do his job. And you're not providing anything, and you're just making even more allegations without anything. So you're defiling the judge at every single step of your second amended document. This case should have been thrown out so long ago, and if it doesn't get thrown out at this point, I will genuinely be shocked. But then Blair's lawyers go on to say, in or around of April 2023, Mr. Wonderstruck created multiple Twitter threads with many substantiated and false claims, which is probably the most ironic thing that has actually been said in this entire document. Including, but not limited to, that Miss Blair unlawfully repossessed his rental car, Blair stole money from his employees in the form of wage theft, and more. Again, this creates a problem, and I did just say create properly for the first time in my entire life, but this creates a problem that is already repeating throughout this entire document of the judge said you need to be specific and speaking verbatim. There is no specifics here. There is even things saying included but not limited to and more. What does that mean? I can't just have a dream scenario where I imagine what more even implies. I can't just say, oh, more must have meant all these terrible things and we should prosecute them for this. No, it's a legal case. You need to be specific about everything. The judge and jury are going to see this and, in my opinion, as I keep saying, laugh. Because this is just a ridiculous case. I mean, I'm going to throw back to Oz's motion to dismiss for a second and go to the point of where Oz's lawyers were saying that obviously there is no viable claim of relief in Blair's document. There is nothing that is going to lead to some form of conclusion, and therefore this should be thrown out. And this Second Amendment is honestly, in my opinion, even worse than the first one. So this is applicable even more here. But the more insane part of this is that when it gets to the claims of relief in this Second Amendment, Blair has added even more claims of relief. So the first claim of relief is pretty similar to what was mentioned in the previous document. It mentions that Blair and the defendants had agreed contracts in place, and then the next part is basically the same, just stating that there were agreements in place, and it basically just says that the defendants breached these agreements, causing significant damages. As a result of defendants' breaches, plaintiffs have incurred damages included but not limited to. And again, this language is still being used even in the reliefs claim, and I just don't understand what not limited to actually means. Does that mean that there were worse things that they did, or were there just not really the best thing? There's no descriptive language, and I keep on, you're probably getting annoyed at me for repeating this, but I'm getting annoyed for it being repeatedly coming up in this document. But then moving on, the second claim in this document is to do with felixthekitkat, saying that plaintiffs and defendant had entered into a valid and binding contract supported by adequate consideration, the NDA. The NDA contains the following language. The parties agree that disclosure of pyramid information, including but not limited to company history, operations, affiliate sensitives, PLL, and all the regular stuff to do with NDAs. Basically, it's just saying sensitive information about the company should not be used to cause harm upon the company. And personally, from what I have seen, I don't really think that Felix has tried to harm Pyramid Entertainment. I think what he really did was give his opinion on Blair as a human being, and also send some messages which show that Blair as a human being is extremely manipulative and also a bit of a hypocrite. But yeah, let's continue. Upon information, defendant is in breach of these agreements by sharing screenshots of company communications with defendant, intending that he uses the screenshots as part of a campaign to damage plaintiff's reputation, as stated above paragraph 63, Illuminaughti and Sad Milk at 24:13 in the video. Defendant has further established his intent to post additional content which will harm plaintiffs in a devastating manner. As a result of defendant's breach, plaintiffs have incurred damages including but not limited to loss of revenue, future loss of revenue, pain and suffering, and attorney fees. Again, it's not specifying every single detail here, and also I really want to know what pain and suffering truly entails. Does somebody making you upset really mean you have a viable lawsuit against them? Because personally, I feel like if that's true, then I've got a viable lawsuit against multiple family members. I don't think feeling upset really means that somebody is guilty of defamation for making making you feel upset. I just feel like you being upset is probably the consequences of your own actions. But also, there is a glaring issue with this claim of relief, and that is the dates. Now, as I said previously in this video, Felix accepted the work of finding the messages from the clique before he signed this NDA with Blair. As you can see from the dates, he was sending these messages in 2020, and apparently when he signed this NDA, it was 2021. And because of that, according to MADCATSTER, that means that these messages don't necessarily come under protection of this NDA, and I feel like the specific reason for this is because he was obviously not under contract at IILLUMINAUGHTI'S entertainment company, or whatever you want to call it, at that period of time, meaning that the information in these messages isn't valuable company information. This is just messages between two individuals, and again, it brings up the issue of why Blair's company is even in this lawsuit in the first place, because it seems that every single person's issue in this entire legal case is with an individual, not with a company. But what's interesting throughout this document is that Blair's lawyers try to argue that the general public and the people involved in this whole situation actually care about Blair's company, when no, they don't. They care about how they've been personally affected by a human being. Now, if you're going to argue that Blair as an individual is an actual company, then I feel like that starts to lead into some real debates when it comes to ethical and legal issues, because does that make me a company? Does that make my friends companies? I don't think it does. I could own a company but also at the same time be an individual that commits acts that I am personally doing and not my company. Because if we were to apply this logic, then the CEO of a company is also the company. If Jeff Bezos murders somebody, does that mean Amazon has committed murder? No. So why is Blair and Pyramid Entertainment being construed as the same thing? I don't think it makes any sense, and I feel like this part of the document is once again absolutely redundant because of this, and because of the fact that the date of messages when they were sent was before the NDA with Pyramid Entertainment was signed. But yeah, that's basically it for the second claim of relief, and then we need to move into the third claim, which is to do with Oz and his video. Basically, some specifics have been added from the previous document. For example, they're now giving links to where Oz's video actually is. I mean, great, I guess. Again, this doesn't really add anything to this document whatsoever, but fair enough. And then they do actually go on to add some quotes from Oz's video where he says, which wouldn't be surprising considering Blair's alleged, note he said alleged there, white-collar crimes I intend to expose within my video, and they even provide a lovely old timestamp. And yeah, I hate to be that guy. Well, I don't hate to be that guy. I actually personally love to be this guy, but yeah, as you noticed in that part, he says alleged, which actually is a really good word to use in this case when you're speaking about something from your personal opinion. And the thing is Blair's lawyers in this specific part of the document actually basically admit that their argument isn't really that great. Basically, they say this statement was published with at least negligent disregard for the truth because defendant couldn't remember if this exact word was ever used, but he nevertheless uses the word embezzlement to describe Miss Blair's actions. The statement is untrue regardless. And yeah, just based on the language used there, to me personally, it indicates that they know that there's not really a case on this argument, in my personal opinion, because Oz literally word for word says, as the lawyer said, that he doesn't remember this word being used. So what's the argument here? But then we continue into the fourth complaint, which is once again about Oz and speaks about Blair's financial situation. And this one, just like all of the others, continues to perplex and confuse me. Because basically it goes on to quote Oz saying, Blair had bad credit, so all of the purchases, loans, and everything was placed in my name. This would lead me to asking Blair, my partner, for financial help. The things such as my home, which she was living in, these amount of assistances would be added to a ledger of debt. I even offered to work in her crypto farm for free to pay back the debts. And the reason that I'm so perplexed and confused by this is because Blair's lawyers just put this in here and don't actually provide much of an argument whatsoever. They just go on to say, yeah, these statements were defamatory because they were misrepresentations of the facts, which caused Blair and Pyramid to be hated. And again, Nobody, like honestly, I did not know what Pyramid Entertainment was until I heard about this lawsuit of where Blair herself had included her company into these things. If she didn't do that, I would not have a negative opinion on this company whatsoever. So once again, this is Blair causing herself damages by her own actions. It wasn't Oz, it was you, Blair. And to say that these things cause damage to your company, I just think is absolutely hilarious. And with what was actually said about Oz asking for money from Blair, to me personally, I really don't get why this is even being used here, because I mean, Blair was a millionaire and she was living with him. He has the full right to ask for some level of financial support, and this isn't defamation. This is just something that happened. But then basically it goes on to blame these statements that Oz made as the reason to why Blair became so hated and ridiculed and harmed plaintiffs' businesses and caused reputational damages. And what's ironic is that it then says Oz is implying Blair engaged in financial coercion. Oz obviously never said that Blair engaged in financial coercion, but Blair is taking his words and implying that is what he was saying, whilst then criticizing Oz for basically doing the exact same thing in the argument of embezzlement. He heard something which was based on previous experience, embezzlement. Blair has seen something here which she thinks is him implying that she was committing financial coercion. This is hilarious because you are literally suing something for the thing that you yourself are doing. But it gets even weirder when it says the comments on the webpage hosting the video are rife with viewers' statements of hatred and threats towards Miss Blair and Pyramid. Again, nobody cares about this company. For the love of God, I don't care. Look, Blair, I just don't really like you as a person, and that's fine, man. That's not defamation. That's just me seeing what you do on the internet and thinking, you know what? You're a bit of a bellend. How insecure of a human being do you actually have to be to not understand that? But also, when you go and look at the actual comments on Oz's video, it's just people being nice towards Oz. Of course, these comments are negative towards Blair, but I don't really see threats or forms of hatred. It's just people acknowledging that they think she is a bad person in their personal opinion. And Blair could then make the argument of, okay, that's just the top comments. What do the recent comments say? Well, funnily enough, they basically say the exact same things as the top comments. It's just people being nice. And it's incredibly ironic because Blair's entire case keeps on speaking about misrepresentations of the truth, context, and just lies. But Blair, for the millionth time, you have been caught committing those exact cardinal sins. You yourself have misrepresented the truth by saying the comments have tons of threats in. Maybe there's one or two here, but to lump them all in together like that, to me personally, is just an outright lie. But then after this, Blair's lawyers go on to say more confusing things, which are mentioned as certain statements being false. Yet there was again no examples of what false statements were false. It cites the example of Oz speaking about Blair's alleged crypto farm and says that he actually owns that crypto farm, and Blair was also paying $300,000 of Oz's expenses. Again, no real proof of any of these things, and you could say, well, Oz didn't provide proof about everything in his video, and that is true, but Oz isn't making this a legal case. He uploaded a YouTube video giving his personal opinion. The situation shouldn't be a legal situation, but Blair obviously cannot handle that people on the internet don't like her. And also in regards to the bit where it says that she was paying for Oz's expenses, Oz has literally admitted that 1,000,000 times. This isn't a proof of defamation. This is just you regurgitating what Oz himself said in his video. But then the financial aspect gets even more insane when it says Oz's statement causes special damages as evidenced by the fact that plaintiff's revenue from videos dropped by more than 95% after the Let's Talk video was published, from $47,000 to $2,300 between September and October 2022, and comparing that same period to 2023. And this begins this really weird trend in this claim for relief where basically Blair and her lawyers just continuously blame Oz, WONDERSTRUCK, and Felix for her losing, I guess, lots of revenue or lots of potential revenue, which again, I don't think is something which you can argue unless you give viable evidence for, especially when it comes to something as serious as this. They're saying that Oz is the reason that Blair's finances dropped from 1 month in 2022 to the same month in 2023 by over $40,000, and I just don't think that's a fair argument to make whatsoever, considering Blair has had so many other personal situations with other people out there. And also, let's just talk about views for a second and the impact of Oz's video. Now, I don't doubt that Oz has had a big impact in this situation, but his video is not even close to being the most viewed video in this entire situation. In fact, all of my videos on Blair have more views than Oz's. Now, I'm not trying to flex there, but I am saying that there is multiple factors to why Blair's revenue dropped and why her reputation became damaged. People like myself and other influencers spoke about our personal opinions on certain things that have come out in the public. Not just statements with what Oz was doing, but the things with Legal Eagle and other situations out there. And again, I know I've been complaining throughout this entire video of actually having to detail every single thing when you say, oh, other things, but I'm not making a legal case right now. I'm not arguing to a jury, so I can say other things because this doesn't need to be legal, but also the audience most likely know everything at this point, considering I've covered over 8 hours of this entire situation. But yeah, just to blame one individual for this specific thing is absolutely insane, and I think the judge and jury will know this. Once again, this document is deliberately ignoring so much context about the situation and is once again misrepresenting facts. But it doesn't end there, because then the next claim of relief speaks about WONDERSTRUCK, and it goes on to basically start attacking WONDERSTRUCK and speaks about how Blair paid him $37,000 instead of a full $50,000, and Blair's lawyers say that WONDERSTRUCK asks where the rest of the money is in his video, insinuating that plaintiffs have willfully refused to pay compensation. Any employer who willingly refuses to pay compensation to an employee commits the crime of theft. Now, this is incredibly insane to me because, once again, they are doing the same thing that they did with the whole coercion thing earlier. They are putting words in other people's mouth. They tried to say that Oz was implying that Blair committed financial coercion, and now they're trying to say that Oz has said that IILLUMINAUGHTI committed theft against him, despite the lawyers literally admitting that this was just a question that WONDERSTRUCK asked of where is the money. That could mean a whole multitude of reasons, and this whole insinuation is just the opinions of the lawyer. I don't think that this can be deep-rooted in any form of fact. Again, it is just more misrepresentation of context and the truth, but it only continues to get worse when it says the allegation is false because the annual net pay for defendant is $50,000 gross salary. After withholdings and deductions are taken out of each paycheck, it amounts to $37,000. In other words, defendant was paid in compliance with federal and state law. Firstly, it says that the allegation was proven to be false, but I will ask the question of what allegation? You literally say yourself that WONDERSTRUCK asked the question of where is the money. That's not an allegation. That could mean a whole plethora of things. For example, in the UK, if you get a payslip, you will see your deducted taxes on that payslip, and you will know where the money has gone. And there is a genuine possibility that Oz was simply wondering where the money has gone in regards to taxes. Because there is a possibility that on the payslip that he received, it didn't detail every single thing. Now, obviously, that may or may not have happened, but the problem is there isn't any evidence. Why have payslips not been attached or anything like this? Why is this becoming a battle of words in a legal case? He simply asked a question, and as I just explained, that could be in regards to why was this money going to this tax or that tax. I think it's a pretty fair question to ask given how Blair had treated him. But after this, ladies and gentlemen, things progress to get even more weird when Blair actually seems to change her story in the sixth claim for relief. On or about of June 29th, 2021, defendant WONDERSTRUCK signed an agreement in which he agreed that he would maintain physical liability coverage on the vehicle and the car would reside in Colorado during the rental period. Upon information, defendant Wonder did not maintain physical and liability insurance coverage for the car. Upon information and belief, defendant Wonder took the car from Colorado to Texas even before the rental payment was due on July the 15th. Defendant Wonder thus breached the agreement, and the owner of the car, Blair, was legally permitted to repossess it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a bit of a change to the story which we spoke about in this video, because as we saw in the first amended document, it was a little bit confusing to why the car was originally repossessed, because when you read it, it basically states that there were some issues with the car being agreed to stay in Colorado, but then there were also mentions of payments. Now, these original things are still in this document, but in these claims of relief, it starts to go into the actual alleged specific parts of the contract of where it states that I guess that they agreed that the car would reside in Colorado rather than just, I guess, a casual agreement. And the payment section is now no longer speaking about how payments were agreed to be made, but it's actually stating that Oz left for Texas before the original payment was made. So the story seems to be changing. It has nothing to do with payments now, and it is solely about the car leaving for Texas and never coming back, when the reality is that Wonderstruck was simply visiting his father and was not relocating to Texas at that point of time. And I feel like the jury will be very confused to why this specific detail about the car being contractually obliged to word for word reside in Colorado was not mentioned in the first court case, but also the mention of car insurance now becoming a massive issue here. It is very confusing to me. Obviously, as I said, the story hasn't completely changed, and I know this is the whole point of the amended document, but these are some specific things which you just have to wonder, why were they not in this in the first place, and why were car payments even mentioned if they have absolutely no relevance in this second amended document? But also, MADCATSTER points out in his video something very interesting here, that the argument was that the car would reside in Colorado. Now the question is what is the definition of reside? Well, according to the dictionary, reside is the permanent home in a particular place. And in terms of the story of the car going to Texas, Wonderstruck said that he visited his father. Visit being the key word. He wasn't moving there. He did not reside there at that period of time. Now, Blair earlier did say that when she took the car, she found evidence that he was going to move to Texas, but ultimately, that was after she took the car, and ultimately, it had not happened. You cannot make an action based on something that has not already happened yet, just like Blair has done throughout this entire document of where she speaks about videos that haven't existed and also this whole thing of moving to Texas. But ultimately, yes, he did not reside in Texas, he merely went there. That is not the breach of contract. The contract states that the car has to permanently be residing in Colorado, which it was. He made a visit outside of the state, but according to what Blair says, that isn't a breach of the contract. Now, in terms of the insurance issue, I feel like the person who is leasing the car to somebody should be aware if the car is insured or not, and something that Wonderstruck speaks about in his video is actually wanting to get the damages of the car repaired.
And the BMW dealership in my town was more than happy to fix these issues when I visited them.
Which to me personally implies that there is some level of insurance here, but the problem is that Blair has not again provided any evidence whatsoever. Wonderstruck in his video did actually provide evidence to do with the lease of this car, but Illuminaughti has provided nothing once again, and it does just show that this is another claim which to me personally is absolutely redundant. But then the argument, in my opinion, just continues to get even worse when the lawyers start to criticize Wonder's opinion and dub it as defamatory by saying, nevertheless, in Wonderstruck's video, defendant claimed that Miss Blair had no legal basis to repossess the car and did it as a massive FU. The statements were also false and defendants knew them to be false. I mean, personally, I don't see this as defamation. I see this as Wonderstruck giving his opinion to how he felt at the time. I'm sure it did feel like a massive FU. And in terms of the supposed quote from Wonder where he apparently says that there was no legal basis to repossess the car, based on the things that we have gone through in the last 5 minutes, I think Wonder has a very good point point in what he is saying here. He was not residing in Texas, therefore the contract was not broken. But again, as I said, I'm confused, because is the contract breach to do with not making payments, or is it to do with Texas? It's very, very confusing, and only makes this case even worse. They then continue the trend of blaming the defendants for financial losses by saying that Wonder is pretty much responsible for Blair's earnings going from $27,000 to $10,000 between May and June in comparison to 2022 and 2023. And oh, I am so sorry that you only earned $10,000 in 1 month. It really must be difficult to survive on $10,000 a month, which is over $100,000 a year. I truly do feel sorry for you. But then somehow it still isn't over, as we move into the 7th claim of relief, which is about Felix's tweet where Felix says Blair falsely claimed to have served him papers and is trying to force a default judgment. Now, Blair's argument is basically this is absolutely not true, and I guess is once again defamation. But what is interesting is Blair conveniently left out a little bit of context, which, is quite shocking, because in the reply to the tweet that she is referencing, Felix says that she claims to have served paper to an address that he hasn't lived at for 9 years. It's hours from where he currently lives, and at the alleged time of service, he had just finished work. There was no possible way he accepted these documents as the declaration of service claims. And based on that argument, I think it pretty much backs up his original statement that Blair references to be correct. If he didn't have the documents and didn't know about this court case, how is he meant to respond? And if he doesn't respond, of course the court will think he's just ignoring it, and it will lead to a default judgment, which you could say, based on this argument that Felix is making, that was forced upon him. But what makes this even more insane is that whilst Blair goes on to defend herself and make it all sound really bad, she then says Felix's tweet cost her from $74,000 in 1 month to the next year of that month earning $2,700. She is arguing that a single tweet from Felix caused her damages of over $70,000. Please, for the love of God, give over. I'm gonna be real with you. I've covered this situation for absolutely months now. It must be coming up to a year, and I really wasn't aware of who Felix was up until when I started researching for this video. And that's not me being a dick to Felix. If anything, I'm more defending his case here by saying I don't really think Felix has had much impact on this situation at all, really. Now, yes, the messages in the click situation did have a little bit of an impact, but $70,000 worth? I really don't think so. Blair, the only person that impacted $70,000 from your finances is you. But then the 8th claim of relief is still continuously speaking about Felix and the DM sent to the click, but what makes it interesting is that this is no longer an argument about a breach of contract, because now the argument of defamation has been added on to Felix, because previously it was just all about the NDA, but now I'm a little bit confused because pretty much Blair is alleging that Felix has committed defamation because of messages that he sent to Oz Media that were used in a video of the clicks, and I'm very confused to how this is actually defamation. These messages alone are pretty much just a guy giving their opinion, but ultimately, even if these weren't messages and they were tweets, I would still be confused to how this is defamation. And honestly, it just backs up my point in being confused to why Felix is involved in this legal case, but I do believe that there is actually a reason behind it. I think Blair really wants to sue the click, but she is unable to. And the reason being is that the click resides in Europe, and having an international defamation case is obviously extremely difficult because the laws of the countries that both reside in are going to be different, and it would be a very expensive case. Now, would I be shocked if she tried to do this in the future? Honestly, probably not. If she failed this case, I really wouldn't be surprised to see her try some international court case against multiple YouTubers. I mean, I'm honestly willing to put a bet on it, but yeah, I think she's just coming after Felix as a way to kind of make the clique feel bad, because if she can't affect him financially, she's just going to be like, oh, well, you know, you used this guy in your video, and now I'm going to financially ruin him, which is my opinion, of course, and I think if that was true, that would be quite despicable. And again, Blair, that is just a theory. A game theory. But yeah, once again, she blames Felix for even more financial damage, going from $37,000 in 1 month to $19,000. Oh my god, I'm so sorry that you only earn $19,000 in 1 month. How do you survive? Like, oh, they write stories about how homeless people and how homelessness is getting worse throughout the world, but they should be writing stories about how Illuminaughti had to survive on $19,000 a month. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, we have gotten to the final claim of relief, the 9th claim for relief, and it's pretty much a new claim. It references things that have already been said in a previous document, but presents it in a new way. Pretty much, it's to do with Oz, and it makes a load of allegations with no proof, saying the 9th claim for relief, violation of Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and as you can imagine, there is nothing to back this other than personal opinion and mere speculation. On or about January 10th, 2023, defendant Oz accessed Blair's computer and read her personal conversations on Discord. The computer was stored in a room set aside for storing Blair's personal belongings, and the computer was password protected. How defendant obtained the password is unknown to Blair because she did not share it with him. What? So is he now a master hacker? To me, there's nothing being proven here. This is just you actually unproving what you have said. Did he use like some insane computer hacking program that I'm unaware of? How would he break into this computer? I don't know. And it's clear that Blair and her lawyers don't know, because it basically says, yeah, she didn't share the password with him, but apparently that would give him access to private conversations. Defendant knew that he did not have authorization to access Blair's computer, but he accessed it anyway. Again, no proof whatsoever. And when defendant accessed Blair's computer and private conversations stored on the computer, he learned that Blair was romantically involved with a third party, and defendant's romantic relationship with Blair was ended around December 2021. Learning of this information on the protected computer caused Oz to plot a way to exact revenge against Blair, including publishing defamatory videos like the Let's Talk video, which caused more than $45,000 in economic damages. And yes, this is just a load of codswallop. I mean, not only is there no proof, but it's like there's the opposite of proof. You're saying to me that he didn't have access to it, but he somehow got access to it? I mean, is he Morpheus? Does he have access to the Matrix? How is he hacking into it? I don't know. Whether Oz is like some secret computer hacker, I would love to know, but if you're going to prove that, then give me evidence to back it. This allegation here is one of the most absurd ones throughout this entire video, and I don't know why they put it in this case. But yeah, I guess that is the end of the claims of relief, and honestly, I did genuinely think that there might be something in this amended document that we didn't know about that might prove a few things here and there, but I feel like the furthest thing they really got on this amended complaint to backing their case was like nothing. It goes on to end it by saying the prayer for relief, wherefore plaintiff prays that this court enters judgment in favor of Blair on their claims pled herein, including an award of pre and post judgment interest, attorney fees and costs, and any other relief that deems reasonable and necessary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my opinion on this document is obvious. I think this amended document is a complete and utter joke, but I think this document does create even more problems for Blair, because obviously the whole thing around this was meant to be her providing more evidence, when the reality is that all it has done is create more allegations with even less evidence. And when it comes to backing up her points previously, she either changed her points to completely different stories or just didn't add any evidence and just provided links to videos. And like, yeah, that makes the reading a little bit easier for the jury and judge, but it doesn't prove like anything whatsoever. And where do I think this case is going to go in the future? Well, we will get into that in the future of this video, but now I think it's time we move away from this court case and actually get into the interviews, because as I said earlier, I requested 3 interviews from the defendants in this case, and I actually was granted permission to speak to some of these people, and there was some very, very interesting things said, and I feel like we should hear these things before I give my overall judgment on where Blair is at in her career and where she is at in this court case. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations, you have made it to the final chapters of this video. I understand that this has been a long process because, yeah, there's been plenty of things that we've needed to go through, and honestly, I've been recording for all day, and I'm starting to feel like a little bit delirious. There are only so many lawsuits that you can go through without absolutely losing your mind. So yes, let's actually get into the interviews, because as I said, I reached out to Oz Media, Felix the KitKat, and WONDERSTRUCK to ask questions about this situation and the lawsuit. But I should just say that not every question that I asked could be answered, because right now Blair's lawyers are pretty much watching like vultures to see if there's anything that they can possibly use against Felix, Oz, or WONDERSTRUCK in this court case. And I feel like if they were to give some answers which may seem a little bit out of pocket, that could easily be used in a courtroom. So please understand if when I ask a question that they refuse to not answer the question, because obviously they're dealing with some very serious things right now, and I completely understand why they would not want to jeopardize themselves. Of course, the situation is obviously not very good for their financial situation, and I feel like it's very easy to make that even worse by giving an answer which could be used in court. So I should also just say that everything in this section is my opinion, but also the opinion of the 3 that I'm asking questions to. America has the First Amendment, which gives you your right to free speech, and I feel like I and the other 3 should have the right to have our opinions heard, to have an open discussion, and just allow a conversation to happen about everything that we've been discussing today. This isn't meant to be some factual based part of the video where we're saying this is this and this is that. This is just the people I've asked questions giving their open and honest opinions on everything. And these words don't just come from me. Oz himself asked if I could use this at the beginning of these questions, where he says, "Everything stated here is expressly and solely my opinion or feelings on the matters of hand, and not a direct statement or fact or allegation of any individual's actions. These are my observations and prior retellings of various events from specifically my point of view." So yes, for a final time, please take this section of the video, and honestly the rest of this video and everything previously, as an opinion piece. But I also, before I go into anything, want to say that Felix the KitKat's PayPal and GoFundMe will also be in the description. If you could go donate anything, that would be absolutely amazing, because of course this court case is still ongoing right now. So if you really want to go and help, please click on the link in the description. The links are there right now. But yes, now we've gotten through all of the complicated stuff, it's time to actually look at the questions that I asked, and we start off with Felix the KitKat. Because yes, I reached out to Felix saying, "Hey dude, sorry if this seems intrusive. Basically, I'm making a video covering the entire legal case of Blair, and I've messaged Oz and Wonder about the situation, hoping to ask some questions, and I was wondering if you could possibly be down to talk. Totally understand if you don't want to or can't, but thought it would be good to get your perspective and thoughts on things if you can. No worries at all if not." And yeah, me and Felix had a little bit of a discussion about what we can say and what we can't say, and it led to a lot of questions being asked. Starting off with me saying, how are you feeling in general about the entire situation? Not the court case, but just in general, how this situation has played out in the social space. What are your thoughts on everything? And Felix replied with, in general, the situation has played out honestly the worst possible way for her in a social space. I dislike that the line between criticism and harassment is extremely blurred with it though. I have my own issues with Blair and she's being fairly criticized, but she still doesn't deserve the outright harassment by the masses. It always happens anytime there's internet drama, and it's just depressing to see. And again, we spoke about this in the whole court case with people sending death threats and sending extremely vile things. And as I said, criticism is absolutely fine on the internet, but ultimately harassment and hatred is not something that you should be saying. And of course, Oz, Felix, or WONDERSTRUCK can't control what people go and say, but we can recommend, please for the love of God, do not harass the people that we are speaking about today. But also, this message right here is genuinely a really, really nice response, and it really puts everything into context here of Blair has been trying to paint everybody out to be a very nasty and vindictive person, where Felix is genuinely being nice and honestly quite fair to Blair in this statement, and I think it's a really good way to open the discussion. So we move on to question number 2, saying, why do you think Blair is dealing with the situation in the way she is? And Felix responded with, I'm pretty sure this is the only way she believes things can be settled. She's not a person that can lose or have a discussion in which she changes her mind. And yeah, based on everything that we've gone through today and in my previous videos, I completely agree with this conclusion. But yeah, then I moved on to ask the third question of, do you know if Blair actually looks at the criticism online? Obviously, there are millions of videos about her at this point, so what do you think is actually going through her mind when she sees the entire internet against her? And Felix responds with, if she's still the same person I'd worked with years ago, absolutely. And yeah, I guess this is something open to interpretation. You could argue that Blair doesn't look at any of the criticism, or you could say she does, but automatically assumes all of it is wrong. And honestly, I'm willing to say it's a bit of a mix of both. I feel like nowadays she probably most likely doesn't look at the things, considering how much there is of it. But I imagine back when she was in her heyday, she probably did look at a lot and probably just automatically dismissed everything. And I do have a few screenshots to go into that later in these interviews. But yeah, let's get into question number 4. A part of my video was being a bit confused to why Blair is legally coming after you. With the DM situation, it really doesn't seem like it's that damaging to her reputation. Do you have any thoughts on Blair's response to your involvement? And Felix responds by saying, in my opinion, she's suing me because she can't easily sue who she wanted. That, and she probably sees me as some poor person, when in reality I was in a bad spot after an accident and she just never lost that view of me. She probably expected me to fold or turn to her side in order to strengthen her case on the other two. And yeah, this is pretty much everything that I assumed, and I'm kind of glad that it's been validated because it's very, very obvious, but at the same time, it's nice to see that somebody actually involved in this situation seems to also have a pretty familiar opinion. And I should also say, yes, again, these are all opinions with me and with Felix. But then we move on to question number 5 of me simply saying, how are you feeling about everything? I'm trying not to stress about a lot. I know that I'm in the right here, and as long as I just hold out that I'll win my side. It's been very difficult at times, especially with the stresses of normal life added on. And yeah, I can only imagine how much stress a lawsuit of a multi-millionaire influencer would do. And all I can really say here is I wish nothing but the best for Felix and everybody else involved. I genuinely am shocked that this has gone on for so long, but ultimately Blair will not, in my opinion, stop until she has some form of victory. But question number 6 is, has this negatively affected job opportunities in any way? And Felix says, it hasn't affected my current job too much. I missed about 2 days of work in my initial panic of being informed of improper service taking place. As for opportunities, it has absolutely soured any wants to ever work for a YouTuber/streamer ever again. So he's not directly saying that he can't get jobs because of Blair, but he is basically, in my opinion, for what I'm reading here, saying that working with Blair was such a negative experience that he doesn't want to work with another influencer or YouTuber. And honestly, I cannot blame him. I imagine it is very stressful to work with a YouTuber. Please, Jacket, do not say anything. But yeah, you know, I can imagine that it is quite a stressful job. And when that person is Illuminaughti, it's obviously going to be amped up by 50. So yeah, I'm not really shocked by this response. So let's move on to question number 7, where it says, do you think Blair's career is truly over? And is there any way or thing that she could do that you think would revive her career? And Felix says, no, I don't think it will ever be over. There are always people who support someone. It might not ever be where it once was, but there will always be something. If she wants to truly salvage her PR though, she would drop the suit and pay legal fees and apologize with a real apology. Maybe take a small break from YouTube and then come back with revamped content, but she would never do this. And you know what? I kind of agree with this. I do think that there is still like a 0.01% chance that Blair could rectify her career, but that could only be if she did what Felix says in that message. I feel like if she put a genuine heartfelt apology explaining her reasoning, not justifying things, but just explaining things, and then paying back the money that Felix, Oz, and Wonder have lost through this whole situation and possibly other people, then maybe there would be a chance of her rectifying the situation. But ultimately, that is a very, very slim chance, and I don't think we're going to be seeing that whatsoever. I personally think Illuminaughti's career can never get back to the heights it was. I fully expect her to continue doing what she's doing by uploading YouTube videos and barely getting any views, but ultimately it's never going to get back to 1 million views a video. So question number 8 is there anything you'd like to add or speak about that I haven't mentioned in relation to these topics or how you're feeling in general with everything? And Felix says, I don't have much to add really. F her for wasting my time and money. I'm going to win this lawsuit and it's going to be really embarrassing that the million sub YouTube channel sued and lost to a Twitter poster. And that is probably like the best way you could answer that question. Like, genuinely, fully hats off to Felix. I honestly, that is a very, very respectful message and I really do applaud it. As I said, please, if you can, go donate to his GoFundMe or his PayPal. The links are in the description. I fully recommend it. And I should just say thank you again to Felix for answering these questions. His socials will also be in the description. Honestly, there's nothing more I could have asked. I don't want to go in too much detail about the lawsuit because Felix understands that if he speaks too much on the case, it could jeopardize his case. And Felix is looking pretty confident, and I don't want to get in the way of making the case even worse. And I should finally again say, these were all of Felix's opinions, not facts, just his opinions. Not saying any allegations or anything like that, just an opinion, Blair, because I know you're watching this. But yes, now we move on to the other two individuals, who remaining are Wonderstruck and Oz Media. Now, this is where I wouldn't say we ran into a problem. Again, I want to say I hold no grievances with this whatsoever, but I did reach out to Wonderstruck, and Wonderstruck basically wasn't wanting to reply, not because he didn't want to speak to me, but just because obviously he did not want to jeopardize his case. He didn't want to speak out and make things worse for himself, and I can completely understand that. And I will put Wonderstruck's links in the description if you want to go and follow him and help out in any ways you can. The links will be in the description. Again, thank you to Wonderstruck for even replying to my DMs. I understand that this is a very stressful situation, and honestly, I didn't expect a reply from any of these guys because, you know, I thought maybe it would be a little bit too risky to speak to me. But no, I also DM'd Oz Media and I got quite a lot of answers. So again, Oz Media's social medias will be in the description, but also remember, Oz said that all of the things that he is saying here is his opinion. These are not allegations. They are simply his opinions. But yes, finally, let's get into this. I'm sorry if it feels like I'm kind of like tiptoeing around things here. I absolutely am, because I absolutely need to. But let's get into the first question, which is simply, how are you feeling in general about the entire situation? With everything that's happened in the last year, I can imagine it has been extremely stressful. And Oz says, stressed. Incredibly stressed. Every day, it's waking up with fear of an email from my lawyer about where things are going, what steps are next, the financial stress of everything, and that's not even getting into how badly I would rather just have all of this take place publicly so this could be over. And honestly, it's just sad to read. Like, the damages, in my opinion, that Blair has put onto people in terms of financial or stress, it's honestly just so depressing to see. And again, I should just say that's my opinion based on everything. That isn't a fact. That is just my opinion and observation of everything. And this just shows how insane I can't even speak English now. This just shows how insane the situation is. I am worried about getting other people in trouble just by saying my opinion. Do you not understand how mad that is when that is in relation to a commentary YouTuber whose entire brand is giving an opinion? That is insane, and is probably the reason, well, at least one of the reasons to why she can never rectify things, because if she has put other commentary YouTubers in that position, how could she ever make a video that anybody could take serious again? But yeah, I do wish nothing but the best for Oz, and it is genuinely sad to see how stressed he is. But let's get into number 2. And not that number 2. Why do you think Blair is actually trying to go through this lawsuit? Do you think she believes it can be her only way for redemption? And Oz replies saying, I wish I knew, I truly do, and this is one that I can't answer yet for legal reasons. And again, totally understandable. I didn't expect, honestly, any answers to any questions. So yeah, let's get into number 3, which is, if you don't mind me asking, when did you last speak to Blair? And was it a civil conversation? And he replied with, I can't get into specifics, but the last moment I had contact with Blair was the morning of my Twitter thread. After what was, in my opinion, a sour conversation, I requested that she would give me space and time to process everything going on. Which is pretty wild to me that that was their last interaction in terms of, I guess, a one-on-one interaction. I genuinely thought it may have been after that, but no, it has been clearly a very long time. But question number 4 is, how do you feel about the lawsuit currently? Do you think it's being handled well? And Oz says, all I can say is the legal system is effing exhausting. I just want my life back. And again, it is sad. I know as much as I can tell jokes and laugh at some things here and there, these are real individuals that are genuinely impacted by this stuff on a day-to-day basis and have most likely had their lives ruined or at least extremely jeopardized for the last year. And this is just simply because they gave their opinion on the internet. I think that's so unbelievably sad, especially considering Blair has made a career out of that exact same thing. I will continue to repeat that because when you see stuff like this of somebody being in such a bad position merely because they gave their opinion, it really does just make you sad to see that it is clearly an example of somebody in a financial position of power exploiting that position to basically silence people. But again, that's my opinion, by the way. But yes, let's get into the next question. When do you think the situation will be over by, and how do you hope it all concludes? Oz replies with, I have no idea when this may conclude. By the looks of it, it's going to be lengthy, protracted, and very messy. And yeah, I can very much see that being the case, especially considering how long this YouTube video has actually been. I can really see this going on even longer. I don't know how, but I wouldn't be surprised if the judge allowed Blair to make 17 amendments to this law document, because that's how it feels at this point. But the next question was, do you think Blair has any genuine case in any of her lawsuits? And Oz says, for legal reasons, he feels that he should be avoid answering this one. And honestly, yeah, I can understand that. I asked, do you know if Blair actually looks at the criticism online? Obviously, there are millions of videos about her at this point, so what do you actually think is going through her mind when she sees the entire internet is against her? Now, Oz was a little wary about this question, but basically, we had a discussion about this topic, and I had personally come to the conclusion, based on the comments from other individuals, not from Oz, but just from going around and looking at other things based on my own question, that Blair absolutely does see the things that is said about her on the internet. She just simply, in my opinion, chooses to avoid actually listening. She sees them and immediately dismisses the criticism, in my opinion. Just based on some of these screenshots here that I took, as you can see, it really does just seem that over history, not just during the last year, but overall, Blair has always been dismissive of anything said about her, regardless if the criticism is justified or not. But then we move on to the next question, of where I asked the question of, is the situation actually worse behind the scenes than it is known publicly, i.e. is there more info most people don't really know about? And Oz says, yes, there is so much going on I wish I could publicly speak about, but for legal reasons, I am not electing to. Once again, completely understand that, but of course, it's not really surprising that things definitely are worse behind the scenes. But then question number 9 was me asking, will you be talking about the situation more in the future? And if so, where can people find that video? Oz said yes, on the main channel. However, for now, until the legal is over, details will be sparse. I, of course, would like to apologize for a long wait, as this lawsuit has caught me completely off guard. Behind the scenes, I've been stuck fighting both the foreclosure, which has been dealt with. However, the debt proceedings are still ongoing, as well as the legal house she's dropped at my feet. For further context, both of these legal proceedings were filed a week apart from each other in August. I can only make personal guesses and judgments as to her motives. This has already been publicly stated on my Twitter, and is not new information for anyone on Blair's legal team who may be watching. And again, to Blair's legal team, this is all an opinion piece. This is my opinion, and again, all of the defendants' opinions. No facts, no allegations. But then question number 10 I asked was, how are the rest of the ex-Sad Milk members thinking and feeling about everything? And Oz said, they're doing well and have been amazing sources of support. I could not have asked for better individuals to call my friends. Even after the rocky past we've had, they have forgiven me for my previous betrayals of their trust. It's the little things like playing Command & Conquer with Click Again, Fortnite and Lethal Company with Salty and OT, and Halo with Wonder. I want to play some Halo. I actually need some friends to play Halo. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. Playing Halo with Wonder and Damien, Flinders, and I just chat and shoot the from time to time. We managed to catch each other. All of these things have been something I've been missing from my life during my previous bouts of isolation. If going through this legal hell to get these people back in my life is the cost, then I actually think it might be worth it. And that is genuinely a really, really nice thing that I hope to hear. Like, seriously, it is good to get some positive message from any of this, or a positive spin on all of the negativity. It's just good to see that Oz and the Sad Milk guys are all reconnecting again. again, despite everything that happened in the past. And it does just show, it is a message to Blair that all of these individuals, despite their previous grievances, their previous beefs, publicly or privately, they have managed to all maturely come together, put aside their differences, and move on. They accepted the criticism of each other, as Oz literally said in that message, and they moved on and became better people. But Illuminaughti, Blair, you could not do that. You, in your financial position of power, decided to silence people and not listen to any criticism whatsoever. When I see this message, it makes me happy because it does just show not everybody is like Blair, and there are actually a lot of good individuals out there. But then I go on to ask another question, which I asked Felix of, do you think Blair's career is truly over? And is there any way that you think that she could revive her career? And Oz obviously says for legal reasons, he wants to elect to pass on that. And honestly, I can completely understand. That is a bit of an explosive question, especially from Oz in this situation. So then I asked my final question of, is there basically anything that he would like to add that I have not mentioned in relation to this topic, or just in general of how he's feeling with everything? And he then states, everything stated here is expressly and solely my opinion or feelings on the matters at hand, and not a direct statement of fact or allegation of any individual actions. These are my observations and prior retellings of various events from specifically my point of view. Now, I know that I said that previously, but it was the final question and it was the final answer, and I think it would be good to end this entire interview with. Because yes, that is the end of the interviews. I know that these weren't in-video interviews, but of course, we're all busy people. I never expected these guys to get on interview, and I feel that these messages have really helped understand this situation even more and where everything currently is in this Illuminaughti saga. And again, I want to thank Wonderstruck, Oz Media, and Felix the KitKat for helping out and answering these questions. And please go check their social medias in the description, go subscribe to them, follow them, anything you really want to do. All their links will be in the description. But I think it's time that we now go back to the lawsuit and get into the conclusion to where I think that everything in this entire lawsuit is eventually going to go. Because obviously this situation isn't going to go on forever, and I think it's time we really need to work out where this is going to conclude. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these next two chapters are probably going to be the absolute shortest chapters in this entire video, because ultimately, there's not really more we can say at this point. We've spent hours going through this lawsuit. We've spent hours going through these interviews and building an opinion to kind of work out where this is all going to go. And in my personal opinion, I obviously think that Blair is going to lose the case. And not just because of a biased perspective, not because I've spoken to the individuals behind the scenes, but because of the fact that Blair has repeatedly defied the judge's orders. Of course, when you look at this case, it is just an absolute terrible case, with allegations and assumptions and insinuations with absolutely no evidence to back the things that Blair has been saying throughout it, despite the judge literally requesting more evidence in the Second Amendment. And I don't believe Blair is going to get another chance to make another amendment. Right now, I imagine the other three defendants are probably building a response to Blair, if not have already made that, and it's just not public information yet. But ultimately, I feel like their response is going to completely decimate what Blair said in her Second Amendment. It's probably going to say a lot of familiar things to what I and MADCATSTER has said, and I really don't think that this is going in the way that Blair originally hoped. This is a terrible case full of hypocrisy, full of misrepresentations of the truth, and taking things out of context. Any normal judge and jury would throw this out immediately, and there's nothing really more I can say other than I do genuinely believe that this lawsuit is going to be what causes Blair to lose everything in the social media space. I believed before this lawsuit happened, before the foreclosure of Oz's house happened, she had a genuine chance to recuperate and rebuild her brand. But now, based on everything that we've gone through, if she continues this case and doesn't do the things that Felix possibly suggested and what I suggested in terms of ending the case and paying all their fees and paying compensation, I think if she doesn't do that, then she is never going to return to the heights that she was once at on the Illuminaughti channel. And I feel like Blair is obviously, as I said, going to lose everything. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations, you have once again made it to the ending of another 2 to 3 hour iNumber video. Congratulations, this is your license. Yes, what license you're asking? The license of a mentally ill individual. If you genuinely just sat through 3 hours of me speaking about a legal case, I'm quite impressed, honestly, but at the same time, I'm also slightly worried. It still kind of defeats me. Is that the right word? It confuses me. It does confuse me why there are individuals that watch me for this long, but I do appreciate it nevertheless. So with this conclusion, let's ask the simple question of, will Illuminaughti ever leave? Is this the ending of her channel? Quite honestly, no. It's a simple answer. Yes, I think she will lose everything, but ultimately, I feel like a multi-millionaire that has built their brand doing a certain thing is not going to give up on what that brand is doing. Ultimately, making YouTube videos isn't a very costly thing. Yes, you have to pay your editors, but ultimately, the benefits outweigh the cons, and I feel like Blair is probably going to continue doing this for years. Quite like with Shane Dawson, I know it's a very different situation, but he is a very notable cancelled YouTuber. He had a severely damaged brand, but has desperately tried to upload out of controversy, and ultimately, he has recuperated a little bit of an audience. Nothing in comparison to what he had before, it's around 10% of his previous audience, but he is still to this day going, and I feel like this exact same thing will happen with Blair. I wouldn't be surprised if over the next few years she builds an audience of viewers between 10,000 and 100,000 views per video on average, and honestly, I feel like that would be a pretty good deal for Blair. Getting 100,000 views a video after all of this, after proving you're an absolute hypocrite, that's a pretty good deal, and I really would not be surprised if Blair tries her hardest to get that. I don't hope the worst for Blair, I don't hope the best for Blair, I just ultimately hope the best for the individuals that have been impacted by her actions. That honestly is the ending of the video. I'm sorry if this part of the video became a little bit more rambly. It's mainly because I wanted to give my god honest opinion on pretty much everything. There are so many facts and scripts that we've had to go through today because of how much detail there is in this lawsuit, and I really do hope that I presented it in the best possible way that I could, and I hope you now have an understanding about pretty much everything in this situation. I've been avoiding speaking about it for a very long time, mainly because there is just so much detail, and I want to make one last thank to MADCATSTER providing so many of these details. If you want to be consistently updated on these things, but also with other YouTuber legal cases, please go subscribe to MADCATSTER, but also, if you could do me a favor, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. It would ultimately mean the world to me. Thank you very much for watching this video, everybody. Social media is in the description. Instagram, iNabber, it's all there. I've forgotten how to end videos. This happens every time I leave for like 2 months. I forget how to end it. Okay, thanks, goodbye, au revoir, adios.